In this one, we're going to get a little more to the mental side of fishing, and we're going to talk about the fall. Now, I know a lot of guys hunt in this room. A lot of you guys hunt too. But how many of you do fish in the fall? Raise your hand. Almost everybody, okay? 90% of you still fish in the fall. And the fall can be a really, really tricky period. The fall could be a tricky period. What's one reason you think the fall is so tough? Why is it tough in the fall? Why do guys have a hard time?
Because they're not used to the pattern change.
Patterns are changing, right? Things are changing. It's another reason. Why is it so tough in the fall?
Temperature's changing. You don't really know where to go.
The weather is plummeting. It's making a big drop. The fish are moving, right? Maybe one more reason the fishing in the fall is so tough. What do you think? Slow. Jason Christie is on Grand Lake catching every fish. Could be one of the reasons. Fall fishing is so tough. The second answer was my ideal answer, which is things are changing. It's a time of change, and the fish are transient as all get out. They are transient. They're constantly moving in the fall, right? The shorter days, dude, they've got a biological clock. They know what's coming. And when that bait starts to move, that's their trigger that the fall period's coming. The fall, the fall has two distinct periods that we're going to look into. And they're both very unique. It's broken into the early fall, and that's that first part of the fall, and I call that the fall feed. And that can be amazing, and it can be tough, because remember, again, the fish are moving, okay? Early fall feed. We're going to really get into this, but real briefly, your water temperatures are from the low 70s down to the low 50s. That's that early fall. That's the first 2, 3, 4 cold fronts of the year that start pushing the air temperature down and the water temperature down. As we get into it, you're going to see bait is the most important word in the early fall period. Early fall feed. Show of hands. How many people have had an amazing day in the early fall that you can remember? I've had some, right? Do you want to tell me about it? Tore them up. Just eating. Fish were ravenous. And that's that's when I think of early fall feed. I can think.
Hey everybody, welcome to Bass University live in studio. I guess our post-Halloween edition. It's November 1st. I'm glad you guys could take some time and come and spend it with us. We've got a great show tonight. It's the fall transition show. We were just watching Ike talk about fall transition. He's got a great seminar, one of our most viewed seminars on Bass University TV, about how to follow that fall transition. When we get in that September, October, no matter where you are in the country, we all go through it. It gets tricky at times, but there's some great tips in his seminar, and we're going to be talking about that tonight. The tips and tactics that we use. I want you to get your questions together wherever you are, whatever you're dealing with in the fall transition. Now's the time. This is for you. All of our Bass University TV subscribers, we want you guys to bring your questions, bring your IMs. We got tons and tons of prizes to give away. We're also going to have on tonight's show the winner of the Lake Mead Open out on Lake Mead in Nevada. Bub Tosh won it, $100,000 tournament in a crystal clear lake using a really unique technique with some terminal tackle that I think is going to be eye-opening. So if you're a Clearwater fisherman, if there's Clearwater lakes around where you live, you're definitely going to be wanting to hear that part of the show. And we've also got Carl Jacobson, who is fresh off the Open Championship, fishing, also a really unique technique, a glide bait, a swim bait. And it's a technique that a lot of people really aren't that familiar with, but he used it to great success with the top finish in the Open Championship. And we're looking forward to talking to Carl, seeing what he's going to be fishing next year, and really excited about that. But we are live on Facebook, we are live on YouTube, and we are live on bassuniversity.tv. We want to invite all you guys watching us on Facebook, like it, share it, and we're going to be putting you into a contest to win a pile of Riot baits. So it's a great prize pack worth, I don't know, I'm staring at $50, $100 worth of baits right here. $75 worth of baits.
Provided by our co-host right next to you.
Provided by our co-host, which it's a good time to introduce our co-host right now. Good friend of mine, Bass Open competitor. He's a former elite qualifier, battling to get back to qualify for the elites. Greg DePalma, how are you doing, man?
I'm good, Pete. It's nice to be here.
I appreciate you coming here with us. I know it's the Open tournaments. They changed it this past year. They got to 4 tournaments, sending you all over the country, and you had a hell of a year, finishing 16th place in the standings.
Yeah, it was a solid year. Fishing the Bassmaster Opens, I can say one thing: if you want to get into the hardest competitive side of fishing, at the AAA level, I guess you would say the Bassmaster Opens is where it's at.
I think those are probably arguably the toughest fields out there.
Yeah, I mean, we basically had 200 boats in every single tournament. You got your Elite Series guys showing up, you got your FLW guys there, you got a bunch of guys like myself, and then you have your locals fishing.
Local sticks.
Yeah, very tough.
Yeah, it's a really, really tough field, and you've been very, very consistent. And we're still optimistic that you're going to get the invite for the elites this year, because we're not sure what exactly is happening, and the final field hasn't been announced. So Bass, if you're listening, we need Greg. Greg needs a spot.
Yeah, we'll take it.
We want to see that call, but I appreciate you being here with us, and we deal a lot with the fall transition. We're going to be talking a lot about that, and of course, we've got BTC in the house tonight. How you doing, man?
Very good, man.
I'm proud of you. You turned down a fishing trip so that you could prepare for tonight's show.
I did. Well, and I'm really busy at work. So you went out with him?
No, I didn't. I didn't get to go either.
And you said he smashed them?
He caught some high caliber, fall fish.
Big ones for the Delaware.
Big ones for the Delaware. 3-pounders, a couple 3-pounders. Real thick backs like you get this time of year. Where the heck are those fish in September and October?
The shipping channel.
Yeah.
Agree.
Who knows?
They are suspended chasing herring or whatever they're doing out in the middle of that river.
No telling.
But boy, they show up this time of year.
Yes, they do.
Eric,
It's the best time to be out there.
Eric, the intern's with us tonight.
What's up, guys?
How are you, man?
I'm doing good. Temps are dropping. I love fishing this time of year, so
My favorite.
life is good,
Yep.
Shake and bake.
Shake and bake.
I apologize for passing my virus on to you.
Yeah.
On the last show.
We struggled the past week, but I think you and I are both kind of over the hump at this point, so that's good. Looking forward to a good show.
Yeah, it's good.
Passing it on to me and Greg.
That's right.
Yeah, buddy.
I hope we're not contagious anymore. But we have Jeff Olson, who is the man behind the scenes at Bass University TV. Any of you guys that have been to Bass University seminars, you've seen Jeff. He's 7'3", towering over the back of the room, filming everything that happens at Bass University, and he's here with us tonight, just capturing behind the scenes and capturing what's going on with Bass U Live. Good to have you here tonight, buddy.
Award-winning.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Emmy award-winning.
Emmy award-winning. Jeff Olson.
Emmy award-winning Jeff Olson.
Northern Lights, actually. The guys back at Northern Lights.
Yeah, Northern Lights,
Thanks to ESPN.
Yeah, which is the company that we're partnering with at Bass University TV, and they do a tremendous amount of work for ESPN. Won a ton of Emmys, and I look forward to his influence so that we can win an Emmy here for Bass U Live.
That's
BTC.
right.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. Speaking of which, let's run this thing back again. So if you're watching on Facebook, like and share this post. We'll put you into a random generator. For those who shared the post, there's a $75 pack of Riot baits there. If you are watching on Facebook and want to be a part of the show, because there's a lot of other things we're giving away tonight, these things you can only win by watching on bassu.tv/live, and that is the Hydrowave Mini. We have a G-Force handle. Right.
Right.
That thing there, a little buff, a little TH buff.
Neck gator.
Carl Jacobson's going to have some sneaky frogs. He's coming out. He's coming on with later. He's going to give away some sneaky frogs. And if you haven't thrown it, Greg,
I have not thrown it.
dude.
I saw a
Making a
video of it
mistake,
though. I have
Greg.
not thrown it.
It's
It's sneaky.
BA. It's pretty awesome for sure. And some other things. If you guys wow us on the message board. And so anyhow, yeah.
Yeah, bring us your IMs, guys. We want your questions. This show is for you guys, for our subscribers at Bash University TV, and we're going to put you guys, best questions get the prizes, so keep them coming. And all new subscribers tonight, we've got a code going on right now, TryBU, where you can try Bash University for 10 days for free. But all new subscribers that come in tonight, one of them is going to be picked to win the Hydrowave Mini. $100 value. That's going to be the winner, the big winner for tonight. So if you guys have not subscribed, I can't believe you haven't subscribed yet. Come on over and subscribe, Facebook. TryBU, 10 days free. Got a ton of stuff going on. Got a huge Flambeau promotion going on right now. You guys got to come over and subscribe just to get that promotion. This is the time of year to rebuild your tackle storage systems, things that are broken, things that have gotten corroded. You want to get that new Z-Rust technology from Flambeau so that doesn't happen to you anymore. And all you hunters, you got to check it out. Flambeau Outdoors. I know a lot, just about everybody that fishes, hunts. Tremendous deer decoys, turkey decoys, all kinds of calls, all kinds of storage system for the hunter, all available at flambeauoutdoors.com through a tremendous discount, which you can only get by being a subscriber to Bash U TV. It's so big, we are not allowed to say it. That's the truth. So, yeah. But coming over, here's a secret. Come over, TryBU for 10 days for free, and you'll still get access to the discount. Check it out. But what else we got going on? Already, E? Bring it.
Go-to tip for fish that do not seem to want to bite.
Read it again.
What is your go-to tip for fish that do not seem to want to bite?
Cast net.
Shock boat.
That's it.
The number one tip is to watch Mike Iaconelli's Panic Box seminar, which, man, I'm telling you, he's got some stuff in that. He's got a panic box, which I think is a cool concept, that when the fish won't bite, when everything's falling apart, high pressure, falling water temperatures, he's got a whole system of some really radical stuff that you would never think to use in bass fishing environment. That he uses to trick them. So you want to definitely check that out. But, I had to tell you, I have been a convert over to this Nico Rig. I don't know about you guys, but I've been throwing a Nico Rig, mainly been throwing it with a Senko. And,
Shocker.
And it's just been, and when things fall apart, it is a way that I can keep them biting. So long as that water temperature is not below 50, which I find that gets a little sketchy when that happens. But if we got 60-degree water or more, well, heck, 50-degree water or more, that's a killer for me.
I'm going to say one thing that's probably saved me, and the time of the year definitely makes a difference in a lot of this stuff too. But for me, a lot of times when it's them times when it's real tough and the fishing just seems like you can't get it going, my number one thing that I try to do is reaction. I actually, a lot of times I'll fish way faster to try to get fish to react. And a lot of times, believe it or not, it works. This time of year, blade bait or even, a spoon, if you're chasing them fall transition fish, if they're getting offshore suspending, a lot of times I can trigger them fish to bite when they don't want to bite.
Nice. And that's the facts, guys. You either want to trick them, or you want to, beg them into biting. Mm-hmm. And that seems to be the two ways to go when you get in that condition, when you can't not make them bite. But it's a great question. Who was that from?
That was Mike O. And then to
Mike
branch off of that, Chris B wants to know about the Nico Rig, if you're still throwing a 5-inch Senko or smaller.
It's a great question. Typically, I throw the 5-inch. There are times when, believe it or not, I go down to the smaller ones, and it's hard to believe when you're throwing a Senko. Sometimes you got to get more finesse. You already think, all right, I'm already finesse fishing, man. Now I got to go downsize that even more. But yeah, I typically will throw the 5-inch in the vast majority of the cases. Sometimes I'll downsize it from there. But when I'm forced to downsize from that bait to really bag them, that's when I move over to the drop shot.
Yeah, agree. Because like you're saying, downsizing as small as even going, Senko size, that's pretty big. And then same here, the drop shot for me is usually a killer as far as getting them inactive fish to bite. Hands down is probably one of the best.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And I'm guilty of not throwing that damn drop shot. I still fight it. Like BTC fights the Senko, I fight the drop shot, and I don't know why. I catch so many fish with it, but it's
not me.
I know.
Not me.
You're a drop shot
I
guy.
am a drop shotter, and growing up here in South Jersey, it's not really something that you would think that you do a lot of. But traveling around and fishing the opens like I have, it's really what rounded me to be the drop shot guy, and then bringing it back here, man, game changer for myself. And tough situations, and especially on river systems, that drop shot is money.
Yeah.
Money.
You love it. I know. I know you win a lot with it.
I do.
And I was there when the drop shot hit the tournament trail.
Mm-hmm.
I was there when Brett Height and the West Coasters were drop shotting timber, on places like, the Southern Lakes in Georgia and Alabama and even Florida. And they were drop shotting down there and taking checks and winning tournaments. And I thought, what's better than the shaky? How could that be better than a shaky hit? How could that? Because we didn't have Senkos at that time. They were relatively new, and or not around. But I've resisted that drop shot. I've gone on to take the top finishes with drop shots on major tournaments, and you still got about break my arm to get me to throw it. Why? Because I'm not the only one like that.
Can't teach an old dog new tricks, I guess. I don't know. I mean,
Amen.
There's always a time and a moment to bring something out, and a lot of the bass fishing stuff that we do here derives from salt water. And I kind of figured out something. I'm actually not going to share it tonight because I don't want it to get out just yet. But I figured.
Now, wait a minute.
I figured out something. Listen,
that was a fighting word.
It was. I figured out something that also came from salt water that's not being used yet, and it will be out soon. I promise you that.
Live bait?
No. I'll put a video. I'll put a video up. It's actually pretty cool. And I'll tell you this: it goes along with the drop shot, but it's a different look. So, so you guys maybe
You're drop shot and squid.
no
Squid strips.
No live or slash dead live bait.
Okay.
But we'll see. Maybe.
First person to guess it on the instant message wins.
Agree.
What do you got, E?
Keeping along with the drop shot theme, Chris wants to know if you guys think the drop shot drops off below 50-degree water temps. I like the way you put that.
That's a good way to put it.
That's a great question. I'll throw
Chris,
that to the drop shot guy.
Send in your info, Chris.
Yeah, for me, once I get below the, I would say below 48 is kind of when I start to put it down a little bit. But then again, I don't, because a lot of times if I get in a situation to where I'm fishing below, let's say, the bait that the fish are schooling on, and I can't get a reaction at them or something like that, then I'll drop shot like a small swim bait a lot of times. But it seems like, once I get below that 48-degree mark, I can throw a blade bait or something and catch them every time. So maybe it's not that I'm putting it down because they're not biting it. I'm putting it down because I'm catching them different ways.
Right.
But it's a good question. I'd have to experiment this winter a lot more with it to tell you for sure.
I can tell you this. Once you get down into the 40s, everything changes.
Yeah.
In the 50s, just about everything in your tackle box can work.
Oh, it does.
It's good time.
Real good
times. But when you get down into the 40s, things start changing, and you start getting into a really small group of lures that are effective at consistently catching fish in 40-degree water temperature. Heck, a lot of people listening to this broadcast probably don't even see 40 degrees.
Agree.
Like you won't see that in Florida. You won't see that in places in Texas. But yeah, when you hit that 40-degree mark, it gets a little bit tricky. So I blade baits, jerk baits are another excellent tool in that 40-degree water temp. But I would expect the drop shot. If I ever threw it, I might know this answer, but I never do. So it's a good question, Chris.
That's a good question.
But we're talking fall transition, guys. If you haven't had a chance to watch Mike Iaconelli's fall transition seminar at Bass U TV, I want to invite you guys to go check it out. Mike is a master at following that bait, and that's the big key. That's the key this time of year is following that bait. Where the bait goes, so goes the bass, and that's going to be that way right through the winter. If you're fishing in an area and you're not seeing those balls of bait, you're not seeing the birds around you, the bass aren't going to be there either. So it's definitely a situation about following the bait. And I got to tell you, we were talking about this before we went live, because there's a transition period that is at the early transition, which can be incredibly challenging. And for us in this part of the country, it happens maybe September and October. And it's like the bass are everywhere and they're nowhere.
Agree.
And all of a sudden they show up. Now we're in November and we're getting these big giant bass. We're seeing full bellies. These fish have been feeding for months. But, I think a lot of them may just be suspended fishing, eating schools of bait that are out in the middle of the lake or the river.
Yeah, just to tell you a small story on something like this, I found an area on the Upper Bay, and I don't know if anybody knows about it because I've never seen a boat on it, but I found something in really deep water, deeper than we normally fish. Let's just say it's in 15.
Which is very deep.
Which is deep for the
Chesapeake.
upper. Yeah. So, and the reason I'm going to agree with Pete on these fish are coming out of the channel is because this spot in deep water only shines on high tide, which is weird, right?
Yeah.
So you would think that on a lower water it'd be best the fish would back down to it. I think the fish are coming out of the channel and going to it on a high tide. That's what I think. That's why I think it shines, and it has to be the highest of the high tides. That's the only way I can get bit, and when I get bit out there, it's good.
That doesn't make any sense.
Makes perfect sense.
No, I mean, fishing a spot like that at high tide.
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
It seems, if you're a tidal water fisherman, it causes you to scratch your head. But, what you're saying makes sense.
Yeah.
That it might be why they're using it.
The number one thing that I love about bass fishing is there's no rules as far as how to catch them, what you want to do to catch them, and sometimes no rhyme or reason. That's what I love about it. It's always an ongoing puzzle.
I'd like to say it's illogical. There's no rules is the nice way of saying, damn it, sometimes it's completely illogical.
Yeah.
Well, this is true.
You do all the math, everything that lines up, and then that happens.
Yes.
Yes.
They go deeper on high tide.
Go deeper on high tide. Something that they shouldn't do. And the one of the phrases I like is sometimes bass fishing is as much of an art as it is a science. Like we want to make it a science.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We want, A plus B equals C every time, but it doesn't operate like that. And,
Never.
And you have to think outside the box. You got to get creative. You got to look at things, try to look at things differently. And as much as you and I fish the Chesapeake, it's hard to look at it differently.
It is.
Because we're there so often that, to think outside the box is getting a little hard to do.
Yeah, it is tough, and I totally agree with that. But I still always do try. I'll do a guide trip down there, and then I'll go back out, and that's when I experiment.
Right.
That's when I play around. So.
And that's a good time to play around versus when you're out with clients.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt. Yeah, the clients are going right to the fish.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to find something off the beaten path for myself,
Yep.
but it's tough to do.
Mm-hmm.
Very tough.
But it's during the fall transition, what we see is following the bait is key, and the birds. We went live down on the Chesapeake just with Brian Schmidt just the other week, and we talked at length about the birds and how important they are. But this is the time of year it's so important. You see seagulls. Now, the obvious one is when you see the seagulls dive bombing.
Yeah.
Right. You see seagulls dive bombing. They're coming down on the bait, and the fish are pushing it up from the bottom. Very, very obvious. Time to identify birds feeding, locate the fish. That's great. And anytime you see that, you got to go right over to it and investigate it. But one of the things that I've learned about birds, and I think this is huge, it's benefited me greatly over the years tournament fishing, is the birds do something that I call sit the bait. And when the fish aren't actively pushing the bait up, the seagulls will sit on top of the schools.
Agree.
And they'll just sit there. And, they're telling you where the bait is. and even though the bass may not be active at that moment, but you may be able to go over there and find the cover that the bass are relating to and be able to figure out, how the bass are feeding on the bait and catch them. And this is the best thing that I've ever seen on the water in tournament. It was an open Bassmaster tournament on Lake Erie, and the shad start migrating in the fall, and the birds tell you where these shad are. They're up in the shallow water, relatively for Lake Erie, 10 feet or so. Mm-hmm. And I'm following the birds and trying to and finding some fish, and I'm going down this bank, and I found 3 birds sitting on a spot. Now, normally when you see seagulls on water, there's one over there, there's one over there, but these were about the size of this table. They were sitting on a real small spot. That's an indicator, right? There's food there. Mm-hmm. I went over to these birds, and you drive your boat up to them, and the birds fly away. And I'm throwing a crankbait. I was throwing a wigglewort, which smallmouth love, by the way. I threw this wigglewort right down the middle of this area where the seagulls were sitting, and I caught a bass on the first cast. Then I caught a 4.5 pounder on the next cast, and I could see the schools of bait, and I was in about 10 feet of water, and so this is a great spot. I'm at practice. I'm going to come back there first day of the tournament. This is my starting spot because I forgot to mention the 4.5 pounder had a whole school of 4.5 pounders with it when I caught it. And I'm like, well, this looks like a pretty good spot. So anyway, first day of the tournament, we get there for 3 hours. Me and my partner caught a fish, culled the fish, or netted the other guy's fish. We were allowed to use nets at that time.
Oh, wow.
And it was just an amazing school of fish found by identifying 3 birds sitting on the water out in the middle of a massive flat. So the birds in the fall are huge, and it's a big deal. I tell you one thing Brian Schmidt mentioned while we were live, and it's worth repeating, and because I couldn't agree more, is the size of the seagull. Like differentiating between the terns and the herring gulls. Like the terns often are eating these little bitty baits, and a lot of times they're not necessarily what the bass are after, but that the bigger gulls, the herring gulls, they're eating that 3-4 inch bait, the bait that the bass target. So in his saltwater fishing, he always looks for the big birds too. He's learned to do that with stripers. He's pushed it over to his bass fishing, and of course I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, that's a good point. I like that.
But what do you got, E?
Okay, so this is going back to tidal fishing. Brandon Smith notices that when the water gets cold on the James, incoming tide seems to be better. He wants to know if you guys find it to be the same on the Delaware.
I can tackle that question.
Yeah, go for it.
Because I got this dialed to a certain extent. I couldn't agree more. What happens is on your smaller creeks and tributaries in the fall.
Without saying spots.
Without saying spots.
Carry on.
I'm not going to say spots, BTC.
All right.
But when the tide falls, it takes the main water out of that creek, and the incoming water is the only thing coming in feeding that creek now. And that incoming water is almost always 5 or 10 degrees cooler than the main body of water. Almost always. It's why we go into those creeks in the summer, because in the summertime those creeks are cooler and it's going to draw bait fish and we can go in there. In the fall and the early winter, it's the opposite. Those creeks are cool. They're the ones that are cooling the whole system down. So on an outgoing tide, you'll see that water temperature drop, and you will often see those bait fish and the bass zip right out of those creeks. When the tide turns, starts coming in, it brings warm water and it brings bait, and a lot of times those fish will move back into those areas on an incoming tide.
Yeah, I agree. It's my favorite, is the incoming, the turn.
Yep.
Because like you said, they set up. It's feeding time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it brings the warmer water, more active fish. The bait fish get in there. But man, that's a great observation. On a tidal water fisherman, a lot of people wouldn't pay that close attention.
Them guys, Brandon Smith, I know who Brandon is. They fish that place like there's no tomorrow. That's their bread and butter. So good question,
James.
buddy. Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, it's a great question,
Yep.
and I love the James. Is the Bassmasters going to the James this year?
Yeah. Next year it's on the schedule for the
I
Opens.
thought I saw that.
Yeah, it's a great time of year too. I mean, it's end of July. That's when I like it. Last time I was there, I had the fish to win that tournament, And every year going back, you know, we've been there now 3 or 4 times, and I've learned so much.
Yeah.
You know, taking a title guide and putting him on a title system that kind of fishes relatively close to here,
Mm-hmm.
you know, home, and I just feel at home. That's how I feel.
Yeah.
You know, I like it a lot, and I want redemption on it. So
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I love fishing that place, and with the exception of the cypress trees, which are weird,
Different.
from what we're used to fishing
yeah,
around
this
here.
is true. Yeah,
You get
for
up
sure.
in some of those creeks and you see all the cypress knees, but it's pretty neat. It's great little fishery. Going to be a unique time of year. I guess we were there in August last time.
Yeah, I think the first week.
First week of August.
Yeah, I
okay.
think we were last year. This
so
year
just be a little bit earlier.
Yeah, here earlier. It's like maybe a week and a half earlier.
So be pretty much the same.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting. I know they're going to be at Oneida next year as well. I'm
Yep.
looking forward to. I'm gonna fish the opens. At least I'm gonna try to fish the opens if they have a spot for me.
Yeah.
Over there.
Good.
And
Good.
you know, we'll see. It's in Florida.
Yeah, we got Florida Harris Chains first. That's the end of January. Then it goes to Chickamauga in May.
Okay.
Then to the James in July.
Chickamauga.
Yeah, and then Oneida in September.
Excellent. Oh, the night in September.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that'll be
Little
fun.
fall action.
Talk about following the birds.
Yes. Well, that place, you know, you were talking about the galls. For me, on Oneida, it's always been about, you know, the turns, at least turns.
Okay.
But the one thing I have noticed about Oneida, and, you know, fishing is always changing. The one thing I've noticed, and I'm sure a lot of guys have, you know, obviously the gobies in there. You know, it's changing the fishery.
Big
And-
time on Oneida.
Yeah, and it seems like I don't want this to sound like it's not there, but it seems like the bird bite's getting less as far as following that kind of bait because the fish just aren't pushing them.
Right.
You know, they're eating the gobies.
Yep. And we saw that happen. We saw that happen at Lake St. Clair. We saw it happen in Erie where, you know, it was all about the bait. It was all about those emerald shiners and those types of things. And now, you know, now it's a lot about the goby.
Yeah,
We're going to see that in Oneida.
it's going to be exciting.
So we're talking fall transition, guys. Bring in your IM questions. We're giving away a lot of great prizes.
I want Greg to give up some more secrets.
We're about to get to some De Palma's top fall transition secrets, and I think that's a good time to do it right now.
Yeah.
When we're dealing with this situation, what are your go-to baits?
Well, go-to baits, I'm going to say number one is probably a swim bait style. You know, there's 2 ways. So it depends on how you're fishing at home or wherever you're at in your body of water. If you're fishing any kind of like vegetation style, obviously, you know, this style of swim bait with a belly weighted hook is where you want to be for weedless. You know, it's a riot streaker. It's an alewife color. I always try to stay natural if I can, you know, unless the water clarity or different forage in the lake, then I change it up. But if I can, this is how I rig it. Open, because when that fish bites it, I want to know that I'm digging that hook down inside of its mouth. You know, get them almost every time. The hookup ratio is crazy.
I've tried so many different belly hooks,
Yeah.
and that strike to catch is always a problem because there's just so much plastic.
There's a lot of plastic, and that's why, if I can, this is the
Right.
way that I go. You know, to show you guys something cool to save a lot of money. I don't care what kind of swim bait you guys have; they all rip, especially when you're throwing it open like this. Because a lot of times when that fish is coming up, you know, when it's eating it, and especially for smallmouth, because they have smaller mouths but they're more aggressive. When they bite that bait like that, a lot of times they're going to rip that bait after a few fish catches, and sometimes even just one fish catch. Hayabusa, I'm not sure if you guys can see this. I'll give maybe a couple of Brian. He could put them on the screen or something. But Hayabusa came out with a little thing called a trailer lock, actually.
Wow.
And you can see it rigged on my bait there. It wasn't designed to be this way, but I started using it for this, and it works great. It's more or less designed for, like, say you take a Riot Recon, a chatterbait, and you rig up your swim bait. It's basically designed to put on your swim bait, and if you guys can see that, you can't. And just, you know, hold it from sliding down. But doing it this way, now when that fish is biting on it, it's not allowing the bait to slide by rigging it that way. And the reason I rig it backwards on my swim bait is because, you know, if you use a smaller length swim bait, a lot of times it'll take from the action if you rig it the other way. So I've been rigging it that way, and it's been working phenomenal.
And it keeps that bait.
It keeps the bait on the same spot on the hook.
Okay.
Way better than it would be if you know, the old rubber band style a lot of guys were doing. It was still making it pull down. This keeps it right where it's at. It's a great little product, and it costs nothing. You know, it'll save you a ton of money in swim baits.
Awesome.
Yep.
Well, E, when you come get these baits, we want to get a close up on them. The guy that I
got
was
it.
ignoring.
Yeah. Jeff was capturing that. So
Okay, I'm sorry.
we'll have this content in an edit to put out.
Okay.
Yep.
But
Yeah,
You guys watching right now.
And if anybody is wondering what the head is, it's a Hayabusa head also. It's called the Power Delta. You can see the head design on that hook there. It's real like streamlined, and it seems like if you use a round ball, you have a lot more sometimes play. This runs nice, straight, and true with that real pointy head, and a lot of times it can make a big difference. I feel like.
So you like that? You like swim bait fishing?
I do. I
Fall
love
transition.
I love swim bait fishing. You know, I tell you, man, once the water gets from like 70 to on down to cold, real cold, you can almost dominate, I feel like, with a swim bait on every tournament, especially a pressured tournament like we have here in South Jersey where there's a lot of boats. You know, it's just so subtle and so quiet going through the water that I think it just gets that many more bites.
Awesome.
You know, you want to go into how I fish the swim bait?
Absolutely.
So as far as fishing the swim bait, one of the biggest things that I can say that I do a lot different is, and Brian are probably smiling because he already knows, but I throw heavier pound tests on my swim baits. Typically, if I'm fishing like 10 feet or less, I'll throw a 20-pound fluorocarbon. That's what I throw. You know, so if I got my swim bait, the number one thing you have to do if you're throwing a swim bait, when you cast that bait out, do not just start reeling it. You're just taking away so many bites. It's ridiculous. So cast that swim bait out, count it down, however, what depth you're in, you know, figure out how far it falls by the second, count it down, get it down in the strike zone. Because a lot of times these bass, if they're feeding on them shad, you know, they're kind of looking up at them. They're going to be below them. So you want to make sure that swim bait is down in the water column and swimming through because you want it to go right by them. So cast it out there, count it down to where you got to get it to, then start your retrieve. Now, the next thing that's super important about the retrieve is, for me, when I use a 20-pound fluorocarbon, what that's going to allow it to do, fluorocarbon does sink, but at a higher pound test at 20, it allows me to really slow that bait down because of the friction matter as far as all that line in the water. So when I throw it out there and I start to reel it, I count it down, I start reeling my bait, I'm more or less putting a bow in my fishing line. And what that bow in the fishing line is doing, because I'm reeling at a slower pace, because I can with the heavier pound test versus guys that have to kind of burn it a little bit faster to keep it off the bottom. With the heavier line, you don't have to do that. But with that bow in the line, it's actually, believe it or not, the weight of the fishing line is pulling that swim bait versus me reeling the swim bait. So it's going to, number one, it's going to give it a crazy amount of natural look because it's being pulled along by the fishing line, just the weight of the line.
Right.
That little difference makes a huge difference. It really, truly does in getting bites.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, swim baits is a great choice in the fall, right? We talk about the bait. We talk about how important it is to follow the bait.
Yep.
And there's no better tool to replicate bait fish than a swim bait. And yeah, some great tips fishing heavier line. The fatter the line, it definitely, you know, it's a lot more friction.
Yep.
It allows you to work those baits a lot shallower.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, you know, you want to talk about more baits? You want to go into more baits? You want to talk about stuff that changes for me and as far as what I follow?
What do you want to talk about?
I'll do the baits first.
Okay.
Okay. So one of my little rattle trap trips. So a lot of times around here, same thing I'm saying, really pressured situations. So subtle differences make a huge difference here. And it probably applies to a lot of people wherever you're fishing at. So, for example, these are two of the same exact rattle traps, you know, different color obviously. But if you look closer, they have two different hooks on them. Okay? Now, if you drop this bait down on the side of your boat and you pull it along, you're not really going to see a difference. Okay? But when you throw a far cast out there like you normally would, and you can allow this bait to get down and do what it normally should do as far as swimming action. So with the bigger hooks you see on this one, they're just a wider gap, bigger size. These are just a smaller hook, you know, just a regular round bend. So the round bend that you see on here, and you know, this is a Riot Baits Raptor. It's what it's called. I'm going to use an Aruka shad, for example. A lot of us probably own Aruka shads from Spro. If you notice an Aruka shad, what does it have? Really small hooks on it. They all do. And a lot of them Japanese style baits do, because they put them smaller hooks on there because it allows the bait to have the action it should have, okay, as far as what they think it should have. Now, by me going to the smaller hook on this one and the bigger hook on this one, these bigger hooks are actually going to take away a lot of the action of the bait, and it's going to make it a lot more just a streamlined roll. Yes, exactly. So, and the smaller one's going to give it a lot more of that. It allows the bait to actually do a lot more rolling. And in a high pressure situation, a lot of times the bait that has less action catches a lot more fish. So, small, subtle little tip makes a huge difference. And the same thing with the swim bait I explained, 20-pound test. Heavy line, fluorocarbon, because it allows me to just really reel that thing super slow and keep it in the strike zone a lot longer than everybody else going just running by it.
Yep.
And that makes a huge difference for me.
Well, I maybe you can address this too. I know I did this. I mean, we've been doing this for a long time.
Yeah.
Here in our lakes in southern New Jersey.
Yeah.
We fish these baits in the wintertime, and you want to get them as close to the bottom as slow as you can. And you found some good tip. But what I'm often out of position. Like I got my rod tip straight up in the air when those bites occur, and it's so hard to pressure those fish. You got any tips to help keep those fish pinned?
Well, I'll tell you this. I will say this, and just to talk about the rod. So when you're throwing rattle traps, or even the guys that are throwing the big crankbaits, or just even like a 5X bait, not a giant crankbait, but a good size one, you always have to have, in my opinion, you have to have a fishing rod that does not get overpowered by your baits. And I know a lot of guys like to have kind of like a weenie stick as far as, a lot of flexibility in the rod, or even just a little bit, shortness, like a 6'10" or a 7 foot. A lot of guys throw. I throw a 7.2. Like on this rod or on this bait right here, it's not a big trap by no means. But I like to make sure that I don't have too much rod tip dancing, because what that's going to do, it's going to send kind of a shock absorber down the line to this bait and not allow it to do what it wants to do. So having a little bit stiffer rod, a little bit bigger rod, I can let this bait do what it has to do and not, change any of the action by having the rod. So a lot of times with something like this, I throw a 7.2 medium heavy Zodius. That's the rod that I throw. And if you look at the rod itself, it looks pretty big actually, but what it's doing is not overpowering my rod. It's letting the bait do what it has to do. A lot of times, I mean, if you throw out a 7 foot Zodius, just a medium heavy, the same rod basically, but a little bit shorter, it feels like the bait's controlling me.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I know I'm going pretty deep into this, but that's how it feels.
Right. Well, this is Bass University.
Yeah.
That's what
So
we do.
So that bigger rod allows me to let the bait do what it has to do and not get over controlled by the bait to the rod.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Great bait. Especially when you start talking about water temperature in the fall transition in the 40s, you got to put lipless crankbaits.
Have to.
In that category of tools that are effective in that water temperature, that condition. This is one of them. Jerk baits, lipless baits, blade baits. They're excellent cold water baits.
Yeah, and it's almost like, somebody a long time ago told me, no matter what bait you throw, the difference that's going to set you apart is fishing the bait more efficiently than the guy you're fishing against. And it's true, because how many times have you been on like a crankbait bite, like where you have the confidence and you're about to catch that next fish? That's how you got to fish every single cast.
Yep.
Because I can throw this thing out, and if I get into the bait and I'm starting to feel it, I'm like, okay, I'm about to catch one. I just know, because I'm fishing it properly, I'm fishing it confidently, and that stuff makes a huge difference for me.
I couldn't agree more. It's all in the details. BTC, you remember when we used to fish fiberglass rods and 10-pound test monofilament on our crankbaits? I don't know how we ever caught anything at all. But
I remember those days. I think we got a lot more bites.
You might be right.
A lot more fish back then.
A lot more fish, less fishermen.
This is true.
Hey, how about it, E? We got some IMs?
Yeah, speaking of line, Chris has a good question on that. He asks if there's a point you stop using fluorocarbon in colder temperatures because it seems to get brittle, and switch to something like mono.
I mean, maybe Pete, maybe he does. I don't, personally.
Pete stops fishing when it's cold.
I fish the entire winter. I never stop. I don't care how cold it is. And the snowstorms are some of the best days I've ever had.
Yeah.
By the way, Greg, while you're here, while
Yeah.
all of us are here, that guy right there, you're fishing a winter league with us this year. Yes, you are. They start this weekend.
You heard it here first.
This weekend already?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And
Where's this
there's
weekend?
2 a weekend now too.
Newton on Saturday and
Sunset.
Sunset on Sunday.
Wow, they're doubling up.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there's a couple trails, but they're running all winter long.
Man.
Pete, we're getting you out there.
Well, I haven't been in the Winter League for about 25 years.
This is the year.
Yeah, we used
I'll
to
tell you,
fish them all the time.
I enjoy winter fishing to no end. I mean, nobody's out there.
Right.
You can
Everybody's in
catch
a tree.
Best
you
of
can
both
catch
worlds.
absolute giants this time of the year.
Yeah.
Some of the biggest fish I ever caught are now on.
Right. Well, the funny thing about it is when you do get a fish to commit this time of year, like on a bait like this, he almost always chokes it.
Oh yeah, big
Like
time.
complete committed to
They're-
the bait.
they're killing
you know?
it.
Eating.
They're killing
Yeah.
it.
I love
Yep.
it.
But I will. I before we get to that next question, I do have an important announcement to make. BTC.
Okay, go ahead.
I will be I will be competing
Oh.
on the Delaware River on November 11th
Oh,
at Gloucester City.
the 5 Alive event.
I don't know who's running it, to
Well,
be
thanks
honest
for
with
not.
you.
I guess I know I'm not your partner, so
Brian, let's take him down.
tell me it's McGraw.
It is not McGraw. It's Craig Duran.
All right, I'll allow that.
Yep, he's the environmental director for the Bass
I
University.
will allow that.
What do we got, BTC? BTC, Eric.
You mean
the
ETI.
intern.
Okay, so Derek has presented a situation to us. He says, all right, it's the fall. My lake has 3 to 4 major creeks, but there's no bait activity. What's going on?
Wow, 3 to 4 major creeks and no bait activity.
What should he do?
Change lakes.
Yeah, I'll say, where's this lake at?
Change lakes.
Yeah, well, but, not all lakes are bait fish driven. I mean, let's address it from that perspective.
Yeah.
A lot of lakes are driven by crawfish bites, bluegill,
Bluegill, perch.
those types of things. And in those cases, it's going to be about rock. And what happens is all the bait fish, from the crawfish to the bluegills, whatever it is, they're going to opt typically to be in the steeper, deeper, rocky areas with lower flow. And that's where you're going to start looking. And in the early season, you're going to look at those transitions where, your banks may be, flatter, and then they turn to 45 degrees, and then they turn to steep banks. And those transition banks are outstanding places to look for predators to set up as the bait fish and the crawfish and everything starts moving to those steeper banks. Those transition banks are excellent places to target in a lake like yours, which doesn't have a lot of bait fish present.
Yeah, and a small little football jig, perfect. I mean, I can't explain. You nailed that question perfect. That's exactly what I would have said.
Excellent.
For sure.
Well, that's why I am the dean.
Greg, have you fooled around with the micro jigs yet?
Ooh.
Micro jigs as far as like super tiny?
Yeah.
No.
No.
I've thrown like hair jig style if you're going that route, for smallmouth, but around here, no, I haven't.
Okay.
I'm really anxious to, because this time of year, I really start smashing them up on like Mike's Mini Flip and the Kitech, the smaller size jigs.
Oh, you're just saying you're saying
No,
like-
no, an actual micro jig.
Yeah,
okay.
no, and that's what my point is. I catch them so good on those, and there's times when they won't bite those. Right, they're a little bit too powerful, and I gotta
Riot
like
Baits
the
has one on
idea.
the table there, the minimum.
Yeah, well, there's the minima, and if you're getting offshore, this is a little creeper. It's a football style. Look how compact. I mean, it's absolutely tiny.
Yep.
For smallmouth through the whole entire season, or largemouth, it works great. But it really stands out, like you just answered that question about the guy that doesn't have a forage base that swims around. Basically, crustaceans are the main forage. This little jig really gets it done for me.
Swing and a miss, but no, but that's I love it. Like I know Missile Missile Baits has come out with a new micro jig, and it is, I mean, it makes a finesse jig look like a power fishing tool. I mean, they're so small, and granted, that's not going to be something that you go to in most situations. That's going to be something that that you're going to use when things are extremely tough. That's something you're going to have in your panic box when you absolutely need to catch a fish.
Yeah.
But that's definitely a neat tool. And I tell you what, another tool that I have started to use a lot is a hair jig. in the cold water. It's another excellent tool in the late fall when that water temperature gets in the 40s. Andy's Custom Lures make some great ones. Spro has some ones that you can find in a lot of different places. But the bucktail style jigs, it's incredible. I mean, they will bite those suckers in 40-degree water temperatures when they can't hardly bite anything else.
Looks like I'm going shopping.
But you got to check those out. Check out Andy's Custom Lures. I really love what he's making in the big bucktail style white jigs. Now VMC has an amazing selection of the marabou jigs.
I've seen them.
And and the jigs that I use for smallmouth.
Yep.
Excellent set of tools. And I mean, back in the day, that was a thing that was our go-to bait. When it got cold, we would use a black hair jig with a black 101 pork frog. And that was the way to get through the extreme cold way back in the day. And they chomped it, and it still works today. Obviously, It's not real, you see them used for smallmouth a lot, but you don't hear a lot of guys talking about using them for largemouth. But it's an excellent late fall bait. But what are we looking at for IMs?
Hang on. Dave Hall lives in East Tennessee, and he wants to talk about Drawdown Lakes in the fall. He wants to know, how does the falling water affect bass movement?
Drawdown Lakes. It is horrible on bass movements. The drawdown has been my experience, and it happens in the fall, and man, it's a tough condition to contend with, because not only are you dealing with the fall transition, everything's moving, but now the water level's unstable, and the fish, fish can be incredibly difficult to catch on reservoir systems when that water level is dropping. They suspend, they become just really, really tricky to catch.
I would say there's two main things that I personally look for, if you're in East Tennessee in a reservoir, all that stuff. Number one, a bluff wall, because a bluff wall is all the fish has to do as it's going down is go down with it, which you can really get on them that way, and a spinnerbait, a heavy spinnerbait, works great for that. Otherwise, a creek, but it has to be a feeder creek on the thing, something that's feeding that reservoir somewheres, because a lot of times them feeder creeks are going to confine the fish as they're coming out of it, and they're a lot easier to target.
Right, and the bait fish get wadded up. They definitely get wadded up. In the Drawdown Lakes, I've been in this situation many times. You can walk across the bait, and the fish can be really, really tricky to catch at that time. But some of the techniques that I've used to be successful, is one of my all-time best baits in that condition, is a lipless bait, and yo-yoing and ripping this bait through and underneath those schools of bait that you're finding. Those fish are. It's a combination of the drawdown, which is making them tough to catch. It's a combination. They got more food than they can even stand to eat. So it's hard to get them to bite something like a swim bait or finesse bait. And it's almost always the reaction tools, like you were talking about earlier, as the dominant weapon to get them to trigger. But thanks everybody for the questions. Keep them coming, guys. We got a lot more to give away, and we've got anybody that subscribes tonight to the Bass University TV, we're going to put you in a contest to win the Hydrowave Mini, valued at $100. And we've also got, for anybody watching us on Facebook, like it, share it, we're going to put you in a contest to win a $75 prize pack worth of Riot baits, and we're talking about a lot of them tonight. And so you want to definitely do that. We've got the G-Force handle we're giving away, and we've got a lot of other great stuff that we're going to be giving away here tonight. So if you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, come on over and subscribe. Use the code TRYBU. Gives you 10 days free of Bass University, and it gets you into our group, into our family. You can ask IM questions. You can gain access to the amazing Flambeau discount that we have going on right now at Flambeau Outdoors. An amazing discount where you're going to be able to resupply your whole tackle system. If you're a hunter, you'll be able to buy all the hunting gear that you're going to need the rest of this season and into the spring. So you definitely don't want to miss that. And we're talking about fall transition right now. And BTC, what do we got? What do we got on the plate? Are we going to take a break, or we're going
to take a break. We got Carl Jacobson coming up. Carl's going to talk
next.
about his Opens Championship, where he threw a glide bait on a tough bite to get some fish get active. I actually got a little teaser clip we're gonna play here
Awesome.
as we roll out. We're gonna watch Carl catch one on this ding dang Clyde bait, and then take a quick commercial break. Come back with Carl Jacobson.
What is a glide bait? We're going to find out.
Who's about to find out?
We're about to find out. And with Carl Jacobson, we'll be right back, guys. We're going to be talking about clear water techniques with Carl and out at Lake Mead. You got to hear that Lake Mead's the craziest lake I ever fished in my life. We're going to talk a lot about that in a little bit. We'll be right back with more Bass University TV Live.
Not a big one, but oh, he's a good one. Woo! Now we're starting. There you go. Now we're starting. Now we're starting. You had nothing, son.
Good job, man.
Whew! Looks like a spotted bass largemouth hybrid looking thing. Okay, you're gonna go nuts, I know it. You got all the hooks in you, brother. That's good. You're gonna need to see that. I'll actually weigh in so you know.
Check these guys out. But in these conditions, I'm going to use this this brown lens, which is going to give me a little bit more visibility. Now, in situations when the sun's out, I'm going to go with a different lens choice altogether, because this is going to give me a little bit more protection, and it's going to help me in those real bright conditions. And I'm going to use a reflective dark lens, a gray lens that's going to help me get a lot more visibility or a lot more protection, and is a lot better in the really, really bright light conditions. Now in these conditions, I like the brown lens a lot better. It's going to give me a lot more visibility. But in the bright lights, of course, I'm going to choose these popticles. But here's what I'm going to be looking for, like I alluded to before, is I'm always going to be looking for targets. I'm going to be trying to identify stumps that are ahead of the boat, blow down trees, grass edges. I see so many guys go fishing in the shallows and they don't wear their polarized glasses because it's low light conditions, early in the morning, or what have you, but you're missing so many opportunities. You definitely want to have them on all the time. And when the fish are spawning, it's obviously a critical component, because they're going to show themselves to you. You're going to see things that let you know that the spawn is taking place. And what I call that is like springtime activity. When I get in the backs of these pockets, I'm using my glasses to see stuff like bluegills suspended high up in the water column, carp suspended high up in the water column. And on a really good sunny day, in the early season, you'll see those big bass come and suspend high up in the water column. You want to look for things like tails. The bass has a very distinct black marking on his tail, and you want to look for that. A lot of times I'll be around blow down trees, docks, and I can't see the whole fish, but I might just be able to see a piece of his tail. And you see that distinctive black line down it, you know it's a bass. And in the springtime, you know, that's an awesome little feature. So you want to always wear your glasses. They're certainly going to protect your eyes. We spend so much time in the sun, and that's so very important. What else I like about these popticles is they give me protection from the wind when I'm driving the boat. They really block the wind nicely, and when you're running these boats from place to place, that's such an asset. But always wear them. Always wear them, no matter what time of year it is, spring, summer, fall, protection of your eyes. But most importantly, as a fisherman, to be able to see the habitat, to be able to see the types of fish you're targeting. So make sure you've got a good pair of optics. I use popticals, and you can find out more about them at thebassuniversity.com. But I'm out here on the water for Bass University TV. I'm Pete Gluzak.
Welcome to Bass University TV, an online video training course where you'll learn champion bass fishing techniques from pro anglers Pete Glusek, Mike Iaconelli, and their talented special guests. From on the water to in the classroom, you'll learn sound techniques and strong fundamental bass fishing skills.
We're live, Peter.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to Bass University TV Live, and we are here live with Greg DePalma, Bassmaster Open competitor, soon to be an elite competitor, I hope.
Yeah, man, it's that's the goal for sure, and we're going to achieve it. I promise you that.
Oh, I know you're going to get there. You've already qualified before, and it's just time to get it done again. And Bass, if you're listening, I want an invite coming right now. I want another elite competitor from New Jersey out there on tour, and I appreciate you guys all being here with us tonight. You're watching us on Facebook, and I want you to share it. I want you to like it, and we're going to put you in a contest to win $75 worth of Riot baits. And anybody that subscribes tonight, we're going to put in a contest to win a Hydrowave Mini valued at $100. So you definitely want to check it out, and you can do it for free right now. Use the code TRYBU. But one of the guys that is an open contender, has been an open contender, doing his dream out there fishing on the tour, and is suffering with some health difficulties, Brian. And he's still battling them right now, and it's a friend of the Ike Live show, and his name is David Costner. And I just want to give a shout out to him, man. And we're all pulling for you. I know you're battling right now, and we hope you feel better soon. We hope you can get back out on tour and fish with us. Maybe I'll see you out there on the opens this year. But Brian, we got some giveaways here from his company.
Well, yeah, we've got a cool product to review that him and his father have come up with. And
this is Dr. C's Fishing.
Dr. C's Fishing, that's right.
And this product, and if any of you guys are like me, your line container is a mess. It's an absolute mess. It unspools. You got to try to get them back in the box. This thing, you can lose, and especially when you're dealing with fluorocarbon. It's like, it's so expensive to have to cut off 20 or 30 yards of line because you got a backlash on your spool. This is a neat little product that keeps your spools tight, keeps the line from unraveling, and just makes life a lot easier when you're dealing with your line. So what is this product called, Brian?
Hold on as I find
Line Doctor.
Yes, Line Doctor.
It's called the Line Doctor. I want to support our buddy. Go out and get you some of these. It's going to help organize your tackle system.
Yeah, it's a great way to keep your line wrapped up from getting carried away. His website is www.drc, that's Dr. C, drcfishing.com. And he's actually got a promo code tonight, all capitals IKE. Even though IKE isn't here with us, we are in his house,
yes,
in his studio. So the promo code is Ike. If you go to his website, DRC Fishing, and I believe that gets you 15% discount on your order of these products. He's got two series. That one there, I believe, has the brass insert for holding your line. It'll handle heavier lines, and it's pretty cool. Just an easy way to keep your stuff organized.
Excellent.
Keep your line from going all over the place, and then the cat's playing with it, and it's caught in the vacuum cleaner. And we all been there.
we have all been there, and it's a great product. So I want to invite you guys to check it out, and wish all the best to David. Get well soon. Get out there fishing with us, buddy. We're thinking about you.
They come in 5-packs.
And they come in 5-packs.
That's right.
So awesome. So check it out, guys. And we are talking fall transition, and we're going to be switching gears here pretty soon, guys. We're going to be talking about clear water techniques. And that's a lot of people out there are, they hear about clear water and they run to the other side of the lake to get away from it,
Yeah.
There's a lot of people on tour that do that.
Yeah, it's either clear water or tidal water. They're two big nemesis. A lot of guys, That's for sure.
Well, we're going to be having Carl Jacobson come on real soon, who's just coming off of a great finish, a 6th place finish at the Open Championship out on Table Rock, which is a crystal clear lake. It's very, very clear water. They were going through their fall transition, and he used some interesting techniques to do well in that event. So we're going to be talking about glide bait fishing. I want to get you guys, want you to get your questions together for Carl. He's going to be coming on here real soon, and we're going to be talking about that. I love fishing Table Rock. Have you ever fished Table Rock?
I have not. Never been there.
It's the coolest lake. It's crystal clear. It's got standing timber everywhere. And the fish move faster than they move on the Delaware River.
Wow.
They just get up and go. I mean, you can be on 3-pound spots, and it's got spots, largemouth and smallmouth. And man, I've not fished an abundant number of tournaments, maybe 3, 4, 5, something like that over the years. But many times it's been here today, gone tomorrow. It's such an interesting lake to fish. Can be frustrating,
I'm sure.
And it's all about pattern fishing, it seems to me, and that's when I've been most successful out on Table Rock. But it's one of the great fisheries, and we're going to be talking about something called a glide bait, which I see some glide style baits here on the table.
Yeah, we got one glide style, one line through, and I can see Carl's on there. I know he knows a lot about them things myself, for sure.
Hit him up, Pete.
I see him now too. But here, Carl Jacobson. He's from down under, Elite Series, former Elite Series pro, maybe back in the Elite Scout. I don't know what kind of angler he's going to be this year. We're about to find out. How are you, Carl, man? Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, it's awesome to be here. It's always good to talk fish.
Yeah, it is good to have you, and it's good to have you tonight because from what I understand, you thought it was last night.
Yeah, but the way the tournament's been and just back to back, and then bit of allergies and all sorts of stuff. I didn't know what day it was, so I'm just glad to be here. We're on time.
Well, BTC can sometimes lead you down the wrong path.
Excuses.
Hey, man, but hey, it's great to see you. I know there's a lot going on out fishing in the fishing industry this year. Have you declared where you're fishing? What you're going to be doing next year?
I'm going to do probably a release sort of on probably Monday or Tuesday next week. So I got the Elite invite. I got obviously back to the FLW. So it was I was in the prime position. I thought I was in a prime seat to sort of sit back and watch all of this stuff unfold. And all of a sudden, I kind of got in the championship and then earned my Elite invite back, and then I got put in a position of having to decide because the Elites were amazing. That's where my whole dream started from, and then the last 2 years on the FLW tour have just been phenomenal for me. Huge growing years, and so it's actually been a pretty difficult decision for me which way I want to go. But everyone will know on Monday.
Oh, man. Well, there's no better platform to announce right here on Bass University Live.
Yeah, well, we might have to do another one then on Monday.
Let me be the first to congratulate you, bud.
Yeah, definitely.
Hey, it's great that you're in that position, right? It's great to have options, and congratulations on your qualification. And, I guess we'll all be looking on pins and needles. Of course, I kind of secretly think that my co-host tonight, Greg DePalma, hopes you don't take your Elite invite because he might get it if you don't.
Yeah, right on the cut line.
Yeah, number 16.
No, that's awesome. As an angler right now, like I was talking to guys, like it's an amazing time to be an angler, and there's no better time, I don't think. And for me, talking to some guys that had different options, I feel like there's just no bad option right now as an angler. The sport has just grown, and everyone has sort of advanced, and FLW have made awesome changes, and like no co-anglers and paybacks, and bass have just moved, leaps and bounds, and just so much positive around it. I feel that as an angler, not really a bad decision to be made. There's three great options out there that are all good.
Well, you're in a great position, and we look forward to hearing about it. But man, you just came off a really cool one at the Bass Open Championship out on Table Rock, fishing a Clearwater Lake. Using a technique that I know nothing about. I'm looking forward to learning a little bit about it. But you're using a glide bait, and a lot of our guys watching, we know there's different categories of swim baits. What is a glide bait?
Pretty much a glide bait is if you're going to talk about a glide, it's a one. I've got a few here that I can show you, but basically a glide has only one joint in it. So if it's going to be a glide bait, it's not going to have any more than one. It's going to be a two-piece style bait, and that's going to allow the back end to kick and for the bait to basically turn and glide. And there is so much that into what makes a good glide bait, as far as buoyancy and how it sits, how it swims, how far it glides. It has taken me at least 5 years of running this and getting the right technique, the right line, the right snap clips, hooks, and then just the right bait, just to kind of really get a grip on it where you have some kind of consistency with it, and you're not just throwing it out there and winding it back and hoping you catch a big one.
Well, it's known as a big fish bait, and we were talking about it just before you came on. It's also known as a bait that a lot of fish follow and don't commit to. Did you see a lot of that at a Table Rock? Did you get a lot of followers?
So there's so many little secrets that swim bait guys probably don't let out there as much, to sort of turn those follows into bites. And a lot of it has to do with conditions. When the conditions aren't right, you're just going to get a lot of follows. And at Table Rock on one of the days, it was on one of the practice days, it was super nasty, raining, and it had good wind, but it was overcast, which generally isn't good glide bait conditions. But I picked it up in practice, and they smashed it. It was crazy, and I'm thinking that's weird. They shouldn't be on it like they are. So I didn't get any followers. They would just hit it. And then when the sun came out and it got slick and a wind or no wind, that's when you get the fish following it. But first little tip I can tell you is a lot of guys will roll the glide bait the whole way back. So you're using a slow wind, and that glide bait is going to give you a big S-shaped glide. And a big fish or a fish is going to get kind of mesmerized by it and start tracking it. Well, if it doesn't change angles or do something erratic to make that fish react, then they're going to keep following it. Then you see the fish, and then you make fast twitches and try and get the bait to turn sharp or do something different, and that's when you hope the fish will commit. Well, usually then it's too close, then the fish has seen you, and it's sensed that the boat's close, and it's hard to then get it to really commit, but you can if it's really fired up. So what I like to do is on a long cast, when I'm slow rolling that thing back, every 5 seconds, I'm going to stop and I'm going to give it the erratic twitch while it's out there and while I'm not being able to see that bait. And on that erratic twitch or on that pause is when they're going to hit it. So you don't want to wait until you see that fish to try and get it to react. You want to make the bait do something erratic while you can't even see it.
Well, that certainly is good advice. I've seen this bait in action, and it was the neatest thing in the world. The first time I saw it, Brandon Polinick was at one of the outdoor shows fishing in one of those bass tanks, and he threw the bait out, and every single one of the bass in that tank got up under that bait and followed it right back to his feet. I've never seen a bait influence fish like that bait can, and it was amazing. You had one really big day with it, right?
Yeah, so this year, well, what happened to me, like about 4 years ago, like I was starting to learn it and I was getting good at it, and I'd done it back in Australia for barramundi and stuff, but it's just a different type of thing. It's a total different deal here, and I was trying to learn it, but I was kind of learning it off guys that just want to fish for one giant bass and catch one huge one, and that's what it's known for, is just throwing it all day but catching maybe the fish of a lifetime or a 10-pounder or a really big fish. But what I worked on is trying to implement it into my tournament arsenal, into my tournament game plan. How can I make this bait work? Because like a frog or flipping something huge, it's a sort of hero or zero. Like if you commit, it's a bait you got to throw for a long time to get a bite. So if they're on it in a tournament and you try and throw it all day, it's going to be hero or zero. You're going to get, you could smash them, you could catch one big one, or you could catch nothing. And that's no good when you're on the Elites or FLW tour. Like, you need to be catching them consistent. So I got to the stage now where it is on, if there's any clarity in the water at all, if I can see, a few feet where I think it's not too bad for a glide bait, no matter what location where I'm at, it's on my deck. And even if they didn't eat it in practice or anything, I'll have it on my deck. And what happens is I'll go out and I'll be on a pattern. And to give you an example, last year and this year at Champlain, I was on a really good, jig bite on some bridges, and I caught 17 pounds on a micro jig off the bridges. And I could keep catching like 3.5 pounders, but I didn't want to beat them up. I had it to myself. So I kind of had maxed out, yet I had 3 hours to go in the tournament, like for the first day. So I picked up the glide bait and just went down the bank and went throwing it, and I caught a 5.5 pound largemouth. And then that got me to 19.5 pounds. And I can't tell you how many times that's happened. And then this year, like, this never happens, but this is the potential, is I had 13 pounds at Champlain, same place, knew the potential. I was coming in with 25 minutes to go, and like my only chance of making the cut or getting inside the cut or getting paid was to catch a 5.5 pounder. The only way I know how to do that is on a glide bait and quick. I pulled in on a spot that's set up, had wind, had current, everything was happening. I made 2 casts. I caught a 5.5 and a 6.5 back to back, boat flipped them, put them in the well, and ran back with 21 pounds. Like that, but that doesn't always happen. But I wasn't surprised that happened. Like, I was trying to make that happen, and on that second fish, 2 6.5s followed it underneath it like 2 wolves, and it got to the boat, and I gave it that fast twitch, and one moved fast towards it and the other one didn't want it to have it, and she reacted and ate it.
Nice.
And in that time, another big lesson to learn is you can't let them fight. And on both those fish, I was in a hurry, I was in a rush, and I knew what to do, and I wound down on them. I cranked down 25 pound fluorocarbon and I boat flipped them, and you just have to have faith that the hooks have them. You can't let them do anything. I cranked down, they hardly fought, and I flipped them straight into the boat. So I got them in, and that's great. Everything happened on plan. Well, if you fast forward to this year, Douglas Lake, I had only 4 fish. Not Douglas, at Table Rock. I had 4 fish on the first day. I'm in 19th position. It's a win or nothing situation in the championship. And I go out on the second day, and it's windy and cloudy and raining. And, I fished all the patterns that I thought I could catch a good bag of smallmouth, and I had 4, and there was like 2 hours to go. And that's when it just sort of, I left it too long, but I'm like, man, what am I even doing? Like, I can't win doing this. I need 2 big bites. Otherwise, I'm just not even going to make the third day cut. Pick the glide bait up, and weirdly, like, why there's no rules in fishing, it's the worst conditions for a glide bait, and it was probably the best glide bait bite I'd ever seen. And on the first bluff wall that I went down, I had 4 fish come out and eat it and get hooked and come off, like just absolutely smoke it, but just didn't quite get the hooks. And my confidence and my spirit went up because I'm like, now all I got to do is run it in front of a good fish and it's going to bite. I'm going to get a big bite in the next hour and a half. And before the end of that bluff wall and you just got to throw it at everything. So I'm fishing tight down a bluff wall, and then there's one tree that's 30 yards off the bank, just a single tree. And I fire to that, and I swim it all the way back, and it gets right near my trolling motor, and I give it those 2 fast twitches, and a 6-pounder just appears from nowhere and eats the bait. And I had 4 already, and she was so close to the tip that when she opened her mouth and went to jump, one set of hooks came out, and I saw the other set, and it just had one in the corner of her jaw, and I grabbed the rod, and you can see it on video, and I go to boat flipper, and I hesitate for a second. I'm like, everything in my body was telling me, like, I don't want to pull up because I just felt like that hook was going to come out. So I turned her, and she turned, and then I turned her again, and I went to boat flipper, and I could see one hook again, and I hesitated, and she jumped. And when she did that big jump, the bait went flying. I mean, like, it was heartbreaking because that honestly was the winning fish for me. Like, I win my first Bassmaster Open. I'm like, that's it. I just need to put her in the boat. And what cranking down on the fish and boat flipping him does is puts all the odds in your favor and you're putting everything in your court. When you let them fight with a glide bait, you put all the odds in their favor. So you never want to let them jump ever. I haven't landed any double-digit fish, but in Texas I've landed 28-inch fish, which should be 12 or 13 pounds. They're giants, but they're those skinny sort of fall fish. They just don't weigh. And you literally just crank as hard as you can, and you get them in the net, or you boat flip them, and they don't do anything. It's just a big, heavy weight, and all they do is shake their head. But if you turn them and let them fight, the odds go directly in their favor.
Yeah, that body of that bait, that is just too much weight, too much mass. They can figure a way to get off of it. Yeah. But I can tell you, listening to you talk, Carl, everybody that's listening to this broadcast is now going to be a glide bait fisherman. We're also psyched, man, getting 5-pounders and 6-pounders, and that's really the most exciting thing about fishing this way, is and that's what the problem is, right? Because you can get so addicted to it that you don't know when to put it down.
Yeah, that's the sucker. That's the, like, especially when you see those fish following you, you're like, oh, you got to keep throwing it because one of them's going to bite. But when they just keep following it, generally you might get one to bite. But what you want to see is, like, no follows and just bites, like, out there. And when they start doing that, that's when you know they're going to bite. So that second day at Table Rock, I lost that 6, and then I had smallmouth were just absolutely smashing it. Like, I mean, they were just destroying it, but they just you got to be kind of lucky to get a smallmouth to get the hooks. But anyway, I threw it to the death, and on my final cast on a rip-rap point, my co-angler said, "That's where you're going to get your 5." And I said, "I got to catch it now because we're going to be late already." And a 4 3/4 choked it, and I just cranked it and boat flipped it, threw it in the well, and ran back, and I make the 12 cut. Like, I know it sounds like lucky, and people are like, that's crazy, like, you're getting lucky, but that's the probably 6th or 7th time it's happened to me this year. Like, I know it's going to happen, and I know, like, I'm trying to make that bite happen. And when you get that confidence, it just, it's hard to get that confidence. It's taken me a lot of years to get it, but now I just love having it on the deck.
Well, it's exciting. It's exciting to hear you tell the stories. We're talking about fall transition and fall patterns, and that's what you were dealing with at Table Rock. What types of habitat were you throwing it at? We heard you talk about rock riprap, but what were the fish doing out there, and how were you targeting them with this bait?
Yep. So bluff walls are a great way to start. Probably about 6 years ago, I was fishing. I had no idea what I was doing, and I ran into a scuba diver. It was actually and he just got talking to me, and he just dives like Table Rock for stuff, and he told me like, no matter what time of the year, anytime, he said, bass are just always on bluff walls. Anywhere he goes, like especially in the Ozarks, he's like, they use them as a highway. He's like, I see them spawning on there. I see them traveling. He said they're always there, but they're just at a certain depth. And he said they'll just go up and back like a highway. The same fish will swim up, sit on the point, swim back. And he told me this big detailed story, and it just got my confidence like super high in fishing bluff walls like that. And as you've seen, like I've made a lot of checks and done well, like on a jig on rip-rap walls, bluff walls, and at Douglas Lake and Table Rock. It's kind of where I got that confidence. So a great place to start with a glide bait is a bluff wall. Bluff points, bluff ends, but just going down a bluff wall is a great start. But I'll throw it. What you want to do is, like, you see the guys in California using a really big bait and doing monster long casts over flats, and that works for them there for those giant fish. But generally for a tournament bait, you want to use it kind of like whatever your favorite reaction bait is. If you like throwing a swim jig or a spinnerbait around cover and covering water, that's how you want to use the glide bait. Like, try and put nice tight covers in, shots in down laydowns. A great one is docks. And I ran live on the third and final day of that Bassmaster Open on Table Rock. And if you watched it, I just hit everything. Like, I didn't know like exactly where they were going to be, but the wind had changed direction. And literally, I just went from like bluff walls to laydowns to docks to rip-rap and then like I made maybe 20 moves on different types of cover, and I've got no fish in the well. Actually, I had one. I got one good 3-pound spot off a bluff wall on a laydown. So that sort of got my confidence up. And then I made a move, and I've got one fish, and it's 11 o'clock, but I made a move and hit the front of a like a wave break in front of a marina. Like, mm-hmm. I think you'd call it like a wake break, and it was over like 65 feet of water, just one of those straight line walls. The wind was blowing up against it, and I'd seen it a million times, and I got 15 bites of 3 to 4 pound fish on that one stretch, and I only landed 2 of them. Oh. And by the time I got halfway down it, I'd realized that it was special what was happening, but I thought I could turn around and do it again. But what had happened is they had all set up underneath that break wall, and they were just ready to go. Like, I mean, just fired up. You could have thrown, I promise you could have thrown any bait you like there. They would not have touched it. Well, when that glide bait landed, it was just like, it's like a trigger that they'd never seen a bait like that just come into their area. And what I was doing was paralleling that seawall that it's basically like a floating dock, and I'd let it sink just underneath the edge, and I'd give it a short twitch one way so it would glide, like you'd twitch and then twitch again fast. And what that would allow it to do is twitch away from the dock, but then the fast twitch will turn it back around and do a long glide underneath basically underneath like a dock. So you're getting it to continually walk underneath the dock, and when it got in their space, I mean, it drove them mad. And that's when I got all them bites, but they were all big spots, every one of them, and they just had trouble getting those hooks in them. But I landed like 2 solid 3-pounders doing it.
Yeah, that's amazing. What a neat description. Those break walls exist on Table Rock. I've seen them. They're floating, and they're in 60, 100 feet of water just out to break up the waves. But I'm getting psyched. I'm going to go out and get some of these baits immediately. But what bait were you using? I from what I understand, it's not available right now. But can you show us the bait you used and when people can get it?
Yep. I've been lucky because, Brandon's obviously he's done the same thing, and he's utilised the swim bait deal for a lot of years as well. And he's worked with Storm on a bait, and it was cool that he had the confidence in me. He gave me a pretty much a prototype and said, "Tell me what you think." And majority of my baits in my swim bait arsenal probably at about $200. So I do use a few cheaper ones, but I like a lot of custom ones that are hard to get and they're a bit unique and they just have their deals. So this bait, when he gave it to me and asked me how much, and I said how much can be retail, I'm not sure exactly what it's going to be, but it's around the $30 mark. So it's so straight away I was like, man, it looks nice, but that sounds cheap. I'll give it a go. And it is one of the best glide baits that I've ever used. And for a beginner, it's pretty awesome. A lot of glide baits, you really have to know what you're doing. If I gave it to you and you didn't know how to swim certain ones, it would turn on its side and do all this weird stuff until you got it, the cadence and everything perfect. This here, you can just throw it out and wind it back and twitch it and burn it, and it just it doesn't do anything wrong. And that's why I like it as a tournament.
Hey, Mike, can you lift that thing higher straight away?
There it is. There it is. Now we can see it.
Okay.
Thanks, buddy.
So it's basically just a joint, one joint. It's got a soft tail. You got to have you want to have a high quality snap clip on there, and that gives it the movement on the front as well. Mm-hmm. But this is a neutral buoyant swim bait, so it's going to when it hits, it's going to sink about a foot, and then it's basically going to suspend. It might slowly sink, slightly, but it's when it does that glide and it's coming back and it shoots to the side like that, it shows its side, and then it stops and just suspends in the water like that. That's when they can't handle it. When, most of our lures, like a jerkbait and stuff, are making erratic movements or continually moving, and obviously a jerkbait, they like to eat it when it pauses, and it's kind of similar with this. They just can't believe a thing of that profile has stopped close to them and in their territory. And, I think 80% of the bites, they're biting it just because they don't want it. They don't want it in their area. They don't like it. So if you're watching, I'm fishing the FLW event here at Gunnersville tomorrow, the championship, and this is literally tied on my rod right now. I've got 2 glide baits, and you can guarantee I'm going to be throwing it quite a bit tomorrow.
Is that the exact bait that you were using?
That's the exact one. That's the hook rat. That's the only one I've got. That's it. I haven't got another one.
That looks like is that a trout pattern on there? I can't quite tell.
It's got a little it's got like a blue clear shimmer to it. That's why it was so good on Table Rock, because it's almost see-through.
Right.
And then it's got a little light pink strip, but it's really it's a great just sort of shad imitator.
Right.
It's a good clear water color. Just to extend on all of that, the thing with what you want to do if you want to get into it, you got to kind of go all in, and you can't buy a glide bait and then try and throw it on your heaviest rod. It's just not going to work. You need to just get an outfit that is for glide bait. Just buy a rod and a reel and get a glide bait and put it on there, and don't use that your glide bait setup, because this setup really does nothing well except for that. It'll throw big paddle tails, big glide baits, A-rigs perfectly, but other than that, that's kind of what it's designed for. This rod that I use right here, it's called a Dream Freak from Miller Rods. It's a pretty stout rod. It's 710 with a super long handle. So the big long handle, I don't know if you can see it, like it's going to give me a lot of leverage to make a big long cast, and then also tuck this butt end underneath your armpit to give you leverage when you need to set the hook and hang on. Because if you're just holding it like this, and you know that's the pivot point, when a 5-pounder hits a glide bait and you try and crank, you've got no power in that wrist to hold it. So you need that extra long butt to get it up underneath your arm to use as that leverage and then to crank. And so I use the Tranks 400. So it's a big reel. It has a huge crank handle, like a big style handle. It's got a big wide spool to allow like 25 or 30 pounds straight through fluorocarbon, give you plenty of line on there, and it won't spin super fast on those long casts and give you a backlash. And this reel is 5.8 to 1, so
wow.
It's super slow. But that gives you that's like a winch. If you have a 6.8, 7.8, 8.1, the higher you go, the less winching power you have. So majority of the time, I'm going to be slow rolling this back, or I'm going to be doing short twitches, and like just a short twitch, or I'm going to twitch the rod and then pick the line up with the reel. So I don't need a fast reel to wind it in or get the fish in or get the bait in. All I want this reel for is cranking power. That's all I want it for. It's a winch, so when they eat it, I've got as much crank power as I can, and I can just winch them directly to the boat and boat flip them or get them in the net. And that's pretty much my number one setup that I use. And it has 25 or 30 pound fluorocarbon on it straight through, and it's got a snap on it, and it doesn't leave. Like this doesn't, like nothing else is on that. Just a different swim bait, a different glide bait is on this rod and reel all the time. It's just my specific glide bait rod, and that's all I use it for.
What do you modify the bait in any way? Do you use stock hooks, or what kind of hooks are you using?
You can do all sorts of stuff. I've played with a lot of hooks. You know, there's certain ones that you can use. They're called quads. They got 4 points on them, but you're mainly using the hooks to alter what you want to do with the bait. And generally, the bait will want to suspend out of the pack. That's what you want it to do. So if you upgrade the hooks too heavy, it's going to sink. If you go too light on the hooks, it's going to float. So that's basically that's how I play the hook situation out. I want to just get the hooks right, but the main thing is you better be using the sharpest hooks that you can get, and you also want to have you want to keep an eye on them and keep putting them, you know, because you're bumping into rocks and stuff. I'll change them out all the time because you just need one of those points to grab them. And when they come up and just nip at it, I just need one to get them, and that's usually enough. This is a Hinkle trout, and it's 11 inches long. It's they're almost 12 ounces, like heavy. So you actually need a heavier rod than I've got there in the Dream Freak just to throw it. But when you get a bait like this, like it's crazy. I don't know if you can really tell how big it is. It's ridiculous. I've seen more fish and caught more 3 and 4 pounders on that than most other glide baits. And I've fished with my mate Pete down south, who's done a lot of. He's in Texas. He's taught me a lot about swim baits, and he's just crazy on it. And I've had every glide bait you can imagine in the boat, and they're all been about half this size, like a pretty good 6-inch swim, glide bait. And he will just get 12, 13 pound fish following it, hitting it, bumping it, and then he'll catch a 10 plus, and I just won't even have a bite, and I think I'm throwing a big bait. So like, you just literally can't go. You almost can't go too big. And this is an expensive bait, but they just look, amazing in the water. The detail in a lot of these. I didn't really want to show you this one. That's a little secret one that I really like, and I've caught. I can't tell you how many bass and how much this thing has caught me in a tournament, and it just looks so real. The finish, what it is, bass. Just when that thing swims past it, it's like, how can they not eat it?
What bait is that?
It's called a HP herring, and it's just a custom bait that's been around for a long time. And he's just you can get him now pretty good. I think he's starting to make them. But that's definitely, I've got about 5 or 6 in my boat that I sort of have as tournament baits, and I just roll through them, and to anything to do with, watercolor and stuff like that, I'll sort of change it up. But, just another tip is you pretty much got like 3 types of baits in a big bait. You got a glide bait that has one join in it like that, that's going to glide. The second I put one more join in this, it's going to swim like a fish. It's going to S like this. You might get it to kick to the side a little bit, but it's mainly going to swim. And then you've got your big paddle tail. So you've got a line through, or your big just basically your big paddle tails, or like your trout style paddle tails, are soft bait, and they're your 3, and generally they're going to want one of those. So if I'm in a place where I want to try and get a big bait to work, I'll cycle through those 3, and usually they'll tell me, I want the one that's going to swim straight, or I want that one that's going to glide way out and cover that water, or I want a paddle tail deeper bumping along the bottom.
Man, you're like wind up and go, man. This is like swim bait fishing 101 plus. But we want to hit you with some IM questions, Z. But this bait that you used is a storm bait. You have any idea when this is going to be out on the market?
ICAST 2019.
We lost you there, but it's
Brian
says ICAST 2019. Dan from Rapala Storm, I certainly expect to see some at the door next week.
Breaking news. Apparently Facebook don't let you go past an hour 20 now, so we got dropped on our Facebook feed.
Okay.
But anyhow, yeah.
Carl,
you still with us, buddy?
Yeah, I got you. Yep.
Oh, good day.
Breaking news. Well, Facebook guys will, I hope you guys are over on Bash U TV. I'm sure you're probably looking for us. You'll find us right over there, bashu.tv. YouTube guys, of course, you're watching us there. Go over to bashu.tv, subscribe, use the code TRYBU, get 10 days free. And, wow, what an amazing deal. I'm learning so much about swim baits. E, do we have any IM questions for Carl?
We do have a few. So first of all, Carl, Eric wants to know, how do you trigger the bass that follow your glide baits to bite? He says that he uses glides and have had tons of followers, but the ratio of bites to followers is low for him.
So usually, 90% of that is the conditions. Like, so give you a little example, at Champlain, when I caught that 6.5 and 5.5, I had windy conditions. I had a little bit of sun and a little bit of cloud, nasty conditions. And those fish, everything is broken up, so they're a lot more confident, and instead of following it, they committed and ate it. So the next day, I made the top 12 cut. I looked at the weather, slick, calm conditions, no wind, bit of sun, bit of cloud, and I knew, I'm like, the only way, I just had nothing to lose. I'm like, I'm throwing it all day, see what happens. And I knew in my heart they're going to follow it. And no wind, same bait. I had 25 pounds of bass follow me all day, and wow. I caught 3, and I had like something like that. But giants just followed it all day and just would not commit. And I knew that was going to happen because the conditions weren't right. The only way to get them to bite is what I was talking about earlier, is to do those erratic twitches when the bait is out and away from the boat. Something that just looked, have you got a hydro wave on your desk there? Is that what I seen?
Sure enough.
If you're a swim bait fisherman and you want to do that, you're crazy not to have a hydro wave on your front of your boat. That is playing every single time I'm throwing a glide bait. That is like, it's like a 50%er. That's 50% of it. Like, you need to have that playing when you're fishing a glide bait. And I've just seen it so many times where instead of that follow and then that spook next to the boat, the fish commits and eats the bait next to the boat. And a lot of the time it's because that hydro wave is playing. It stops them from second guessing anything. They get in close to it. It looks like a bait fish, sounds like a bait fish, stuff's getting eaten, and then they take out that second guess and they commit and eat it. But those follows are 90% either the bait's too small, the bait's too big, and the conditions aren't right. And, you know, Table Rock taught me that there's no rule book, because they ate that bait on cloudy, pouring rain conditions. And that's been the biggest no-no for me. You want 5 to 10 miles an hour winds and sun, and that is like the time that they're gonna eat it really good. But I would say work on that erratic twitch away from the boat, and make sure that bait doesn't turn or roll or do something that it shouldn't do when you're twitching it out at that distance. Make sure it darts and stays upright and looks natural, because that's when they'll bite it.
Great question, Eric. Even better answer, Carl. What else we got, Eric?
Hog Snatching wants to know, will deeper fish come up to eat the glide bait, or do they sink down to the depth they're at? Or does the bait, or do you sink the bait down to the depth that they're at?
Most of the time, that's what we talk about with clarity. So you want to have as much visibility as you can get in the water when fishing a glide bait. It hasn't got a lot of vibration. It pushes and moves a lot of water, so they can feel it. But it's a real visual bait. Like, they are mesmerized by the way it's turning, by the way it's gliding and then suspending. So water clarity is everything. If it's dirty, just don't even pick it up. That's when you need to go to maybe a paddle tail that has a lot of vibration and a lot of roll. And the clearer the lake gets, the further the fish will come to get it. So you go to Lake Mead, I've watched them swim from 30 feet down and come up to the top and eat it. And they can see it from 30 feet down, because you can see 30 feet down. So whatever distance that visibility is that's how far they will come. And, you know, I've seen fish just come from just completely out of nowhere, and you know, from right hand side, and you're fishing the bank to come and get it. So you definitely don't need to sink it down. A lot of the time, and most of the time, I want them rising to it. I don't want it down in amongst them where they can see the side. I generally want them coming up underneath it and eating it. So you want to keep your bait above the fish most of the time, because they're going to get the best silhouette of that bait against the sky.
I wonder how these baits are going to work in the South Jersey Winter League this year, because I have a feeling a bunch of guys are going to be throwing them.
I would ask Greg DePalma sitting right next to you.
I've actually never thrown one in a South Jersey tournament, just out fun fishing around here.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to be throwing
I don't. Well, around here they work well. They really do. You know, Carl, a little different here in South Jersey in our winter leagues, because, you know, our average lake is probably 50, maybe 60 acres, and you got 30 boats piled in one spot. So
it's awesome.
Yeah. So, you know, I don't know how well the glide baits will work in that situation.
Well, I think that's, you know, sometimes that's where you want to throw it, because that's no one else is throwing it. Oftentimes it's just because no one is throwing it and they've just never seen it, so they will eat it. You're honestly, when you throw the glide bait, you're targeting a fish that cannot be caught on anything else. Like, I 100% believe that. Like, where those fish at Champlain is just an example, but this happens a lot. Where I caught them fish, 50 people fished that day, at least, and they had pounded it every single day for days, and 5 boats watched me boat flip those fish, and they came up to me at weigh-in and just were like, what the heck did you just do? Because we had been pounding there like every day with every bait. And I know those, like a 6.5 pounder Champlain is like, that's probably as big as they get. Like, that's a smart fish that's been in there a long time. There's no way you would have caught that fish on anything else but that glide bait.
Yeah, that's amazing. You know, I think some guys will see the glide bait in South Jersey lakes. They'll see the glide bait come near them, and they'll start throwing at it, thinking that it's a keeper bass that they might be able to weigh in the tournament.
Hey man, those 12 inchers.
Nice.
We got another IM.
We
like
do.
Like, you want to throw, like, you go.
Patrick wants to know if you have any glide baits that are smaller in size that you'll, in essence, downsize to if it ever gets
question,
tough and you
Patrick.
still want to throw a glide bait.
I do. I have a few that are like bluegill imitations and stuff like that. But you kind of, it's weird. Like you put yourself back into just fishing a lure in the sense, and they need to be, the fish needs to be super dialed in to that bait. Like as soon as you get to a smaller swim bait, they're only going to eat it because they're eating something that's very, very similar to that. So in that situation, bluegill beds, bass around beds that bluegill are trying to eat, and when bass are feeding heavily on bluegill, I might throw a real typical bluegill imitation glide bait or a jointed one. But in that situation as well, there's so many bluegill and there's so many fish that they could just eat that look the same. I've found that throwing a bigger bait in there will get them to commit to it rather than an equal size to what they're eating. So you can definitely go down in size and it'll work. You'll have to go down in rod size, go down in line. Like line makes a big difference when you get into your smaller baits. If you use that 20, 25, it will affect the way it swims. So the smaller you go, you're going to have to be really super dialed into what they're actually eating, and then try and, you're basically really trying to trick them into eating it at that stage, where the glide, it's the size and the movement and everything is what is actually making them commit and eat it.
Awesome. What do you got, BTC?
E-Rock.
We got another question, and this one I think is going to be a winner. T.A. Hog Snatcher wants to know, should I bust out the glide bait around the spawning time?
Great question.
Yeah, that's a 100%. I learned from a few guys. And that's kind of a secret with a lot of guys. I mean that's with a real big smart fish in like Florida. Lighten them, they goes up on that, and there's no way you throw a real big tail. Often, then that'll fire them up because they hate something that big getting in amongst their area. So, 100%, definitely try it.
It's still somewhat of a secret because you froze up for most of that, Carl. But it's all right. We get it.
Definitely. That's 100%er.
Hey, Carl, did you? We're starting to get towards the end on time here, and we got to get the bub.
Yep.
Did you want to talk about that sneaky frog a little bit? It's something that Eric and I got to fool around with when we were hanging out with your boy. Damn it. When we got to hang out with Bud Cipoletti. So we got to mess with it a little bit. But did you want to talk about that?
You still got me? It looks like I'm getting bad connection.
Yeah. Pete, you pick up.
Yeah, we got you, Carl. I think you just froze up there for just a little while, and we want to talk about the sneaky frog. Is it truly sneaky?
It is. It is very sneaky. I brought a couple of the baits in that I actually used it. That I used at Table Rock, and the sneaky frog is it's a bigger style frog that is similar to the glide bait. But what we did with that is Mollix gave me that bait and said, "Tell me what you think of it. Tell us what you think. It's like ready to go." And I fished it, and it was what I saw with it was crazy. And I got back to him. I said, "Don't put this in production. Like, change this, this, and this, and you could have one of the best frogs on the market." And they worked with me, and it actually took almost 2 years to get it perfected. And they end up bringing it out. And what the thing with it is, it has a belly weight that's centered, and the frog is a bigger style frog, but the belly weight's in the very center, and you can literally get that frog to turn on a dime.
In place.
Have I still got yous?
Yeah.
Yep, we got you, buddy.
Yes.
He must not have us. But yeah, you're coming through loud and clear. Of course, you're froze up at the exact moment that I'm saying that right now. But it's a weighted frog, and we got to if we can get Carl back, we're gonna have him show it to us, and hopefully he's got one there, and it sounds pretty cool. Where you can
I saw a video on it actually.
Yeah?
I haven't used it, but actually Carl was doing the video on it, and he hits the frog the same way you would for a glide, and he spins it right around.
Yeah,
No
you
kidding.
can get it to walk almost in place.
Yep.
Wow.
I mean, it will just
Yep.
break. It's nasty. Like you said, it's weighted more in the middle.
That makes sense.
So there's so it just really
And the hookup ratio.
That's
too.
a good idea.
yeah,
not
and,
forget
it's
that
got a
hookup
long
ratio.
hook. It's dope.
Right.
Yeah.
But he says it's a bigger size frog.
Yeah,
It
it's
is,
small.
and you get the small fish on it.
Really?
Absolutely.
Interesting.
And the medium ones and the big ones.
Yes, you do. Also
it
those.
sounds sneaky.
I believe we have our buddy back.
Are you back with us now, Carl?
Yeah, I got you back.
Yeah, you were talking about that bait is weighted in the middle so that
Yeah.
you can work it in one place.
Yeah, that was originally what I saw. I'm just coming out to my boat here right now because I brought a couple other little baits in there. I think I got one here ready to go. Yeah. So try and be quick.
There
So
it is.
how's that? Can you see me?
Yeah, we got you.
Yeah.
So this is the sneaky frog, and it's a longer, it's like a spook style profile.
Yep.
But as you can see, that belly weight is right in the center of the bait. And when they first gave it to me was in the spawn, and I was down in Florida, and I was fishing Harris chain, and I threw it over beds that I was struggling to get bites, and I could keep it directly over the bed and literally get, instead of walking it and it moving off that bed, I could get it to spin like on a dime. I can get it to turn a full 180 non-stop and not move forward ever. And those bedding fish absolutely hated it, and that's when I started getting the bites. But what was happening, like the body was so long, it was bunching up into the hooks, and just a few small things that I was like, let us fix this. And we worked on it so hard, all these little things that they made it my frog in the end. We'd altered it, and they basically, made it my frog to work with. So it was really cool. It's one of my favorite frogs. It's all I've put on, but I could honestly put you onto about 15 people that have been in the boat with me, and I've had this on, and they've all got sneaky frogs in their boat right now. It's done some pretty special things with a lot of Elite Series guys. I had at Champlain, I had Elite Series guy message me at like 11 o'clock at night and say, have you got 2 white sneaky frogs? I need them. And he was there the next morning at 4 a.m. to grab them. I'm like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a powerful little weapon. Well, it does something that's sneaky.
Yeah.
A little bit different than most other
different.
frogs.
It's got the single tail. It's got one tail, so that gives it less drag. It's got good hook, but there's a few different sizes in it now, which is cool. But the big one is my favorite because it generates those bigger bites.
Word up.
So, are you going to be throwing tomorrow on Gunnersville the sneaky frog or the glide bait?
I'm going to be throwing everything in my boat, but both of them are on my deck right now. Boat's covered up. I'm gonna, we've had 2 days off now, and so the fish have had a bit of a break. But man, these fish have been pound. I've never seen so many boats on a lake in my life, and I've seen a lot of boats on a lot of lakes. These fish must be so smart. I mean, you have to pull out every trick in the book to get a bite. It's pretty crazy. There's a 380 boat tournament going out of Scottsboro tomorrow morning, and we've got 200 in ours. There was a 300 and something boat frog tournament on Saturday and Sunday just gone. So I really wanted to go fishing today because I got some really good bites when the conditions were like this. So I'm kind of excited to get out there. It's going to be cloudy and windy and pretty nasty, so I think the fishing's going to be good.
Carl, 380 boats on a weekday, and that's not even the championship?
Yeah, it's not the championship. It's a local teams deal going down south, Scottsboro or something down here. Tomorrow,
So that's
Friday and Saturday.
That's like 760 dudes not working?
Yeah, I know, definitely no one works around Gunnersville Lake Fish.
My goodness.
Well, how could you at that lake right there? We'd all be off too. Well, man,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Well, we're gonna be watching. I guess we can follow this on FLW Fishing.
Yeah, and I'll actually be live on my YouTube channel all day. So if you wanna go in there about 7:30, I'll go live, and you'll be able to just watch me fish all day.
Excellent, man. Well,
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I watched him stream from Table Rock on his YouTube. He sets it up, and first thing in the morning, he's in his boat getting ready, and it's streaming.
Awesome.
All the way to the end. It's pretty wild.
You mean it's not cutting them off after an hour and 25 minutes?
No, Facebook, you dirtballs.
Yeah.
But no, it was awesome, dude. Got to watch him catch fish, and it gets intense. It's pretty cool.
Man,
We're even going to play a clip from the about 12 minutes left in your final day at Table Rock, Carl.
Don't do that.
All right, I won't do that.
If you want to know how strong a Minn Kota Ultrex is, then watch that clip.
It was pretty wild, dude. Wild stuff.
Hey, man. Well, hey, best of luck to you in the Derby, and good luck in your decision on Monday. We're going to be watching both. And thanks a bunch, man. I learned a lot. I know our guys learned a lot as well. So I appreciate you, giving us the goods on fishing a big swim bait and all the other stuff. And wish you all the best. The guys can watch you on YouTube live. I guess you're all over social media as well. How can they follow you there?
Yeah, on Instagram and Facebook, just Carl Jacobson, and my website's carljacobson.com. And you can just follow everything now. I usually put the YouTube links and everything up. So I appreciate you having me on. Hope you learned some stuff. It's an exciting technique, and I want more people to experience it because it's pretty cool.
I want to be swinging over 6-pounders at the end of a Derby day.
Yeah, it's a feeling like no other. It's pretty amazing when it happens.
Man, I'm sure it is. But hey, thanks a bunch, man. Good luck, and we'll be watching.
Yep. Thanks, guys. See you later.
Good luck, man.
Man, that was great. I mean, I learned a lot about swim baits. I'm just excited as hell to get out and get some of these tools. I have some. I've just started, playing with that technique a little bit, but I'm inspired now. It's a great time of year around here to be trying them.
Yeah, I mean, the ones I've caught around here, man, they absolutely rip the rod out of your hand. I mean, they crush it.
That's awesome.
It's fun.
I can't wait. Are we going to take a quick break, Brian?
We are going to take a break. We're going to watch the last few minutes of Carl's day on Table Rock. It's actually pretty cool. Carl had a little moment. Oh, you're queued up for it.
I'm ready to go, man.
Yeah, it's pretty intense. Back up like 30 seconds. Because just back it up 30 seconds if you can.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, guys. If you're watching us on YouTube, come on over and subscribe to Bass U TV. We're going to be giving away this Hydra Wave, which is, Carl says, is 100%er. You got to have it when you're throwing glide baits. You got to have it, and you got to have it on.
I bet it would work. And we're going to talk to Bub here in a minute. And he was out there on Lake Mead, deep, clear water, schooling fish.
Yep.
So we'll have to ask him.
Yeah, we got a lot. We're going to be talking more clear water fishing. Bub Tosh, West Coasters. I mean, it's still early out there. We're going to be talking about Lake Mead, one of the most unique lakes on the planet, and how Bub used it to win $100,000 in the U.S. Open. One of the oldest derbies, the original $100,000 tournament. I didn't know if you knew that or not.
I did not know that.
But he won a cool 115 G's, I think, out there on Lake Mead. Looking forward to talking to Bub how he did it. He's an exciting interview. You want to stick around for that. We will be back with more Bass University TV Live right after this.
You know what I noticed about this, Greg? When he was making a lot of short flips working that glide bait.
That,
Sorry about that.
come on. Fishing that
Trying to
break
call
wall I
him
was
out.
talking about, I think, right?
Yeah, yeah. But I watched probably an hour and a half of this when he was live during that event, and I mean, he would just make a lot, fishing docks and things like that. Just a lot of short, even like 10-foot casts. It seemed like. It's
Yeah.
pretty wild.
I'll tell you, from my experience with, fishing the big baits, especially on docks and cover, like he kind of said, bringing that bait in and actually making that erratic movement on it is definitely key to pull them fish out underneath that dock.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you one thing that's super important, I mentioned this to Pete, is eyewear. Having a good polarized sunglasses, because a lot of times if you don't have a good pair on and them fish are coming up, you're not going to see them.
Right. Yep.
I wear Mako eyewear.
Right.
That's what I wear. And there's a lot of good stuff on the market, but
Yep.
it's just a good little tip to have for sure.
Yep. So what do you got? A Gantarelle there?
I have a Jackal Gantia. I throw it a lot actually.
Okay. Yep.
And it's funny. Carl mentioned smallmouth. One of the lakes here that I throw it on has a lot of smallmouth in it, and same deal. Most of them I hook on the outside of the face, just because they can't get it down their mouth. But man, they crushed that thing.
Now that's a double jointed.
Yeah, it's double jointed. It's actually, the fishing world. It's classified as a glide bait. As far as the packaging goes.
Four joints.
So
Does it do? I guess it accomplishes that erratic retrieve, or
Yeah,
How do you trigger the strikes?
So kind of the same thing. I was going to ask him this question, but he just kept on going, so I let him go. But a lot of times for me, just a steady retrieve works really well if it's very cold, like a real slow steady, or after a front. If you have like a big storm come in, right after that, a steady retrieve seems like it does get a lot of bites. Otherwise, for me, it's usually cast it out, let it get down with the suspends, let it get down a little bit, do like about 4 turns, and just 2 small little hits on the tip, and that gives a little bit faster. If they're really aggressive, I'll reel it kind of fast, the same way you would like a fluke style, and keep it going the whole entire time if they're really aggressive and they're feeding. If you see fish like boiling or something like that,
Right.
otherwise, if I'm fishing over vegetation, suspended vegetation, I kind of do like a consistent reel of maybe about 10 or 12, and then I'll do a 1, 2, 3, 4 hit, and then keep on going. So there's kind of like 4 different ways that I retrieve it, depending on what's going on.
What smallmouth lakes around here?
Union.
Ah, yes, Union Lake.
You
is
get
a
around
good
the roadbed,
smallmouth lake.
man, they crush that thing.
No
It
kidding.
is a good one. That's the color too. I've caught a lot of fish, a lot of different places. The first fish I ever caught a fish on it was Douglas. On that
Okay.
one.
All right.
Line through wise, this is just a savage gear, just a cheap style bait. But man, it works really well. Mananico, they crushed this one.
Really?
Yeah, big time. I actually went to Mananico the other day. I had 4 come up on it. The first one inhaled, I lost it, and then the other 3 bumped it and turned off.
Right.
Yep.
Mananico Ponds is the home of the New Jersey state record.
Yep.
By the way, so it makes sense that you can throw big swim bait there.
Yeah.
Have a chance for some fish, and it's clear water lake. It's
Yeah.
perfectly, that's what we throw these things
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, the drawing power on all these baits, the bigger baits, it's truly amazing. It really is. Like Carl said, he had a good point there. The classification of fish with size and how old they are, and why these fish are so intelligent at like a 5 or 6 pound rate, because they're so old and they've seen it all, and they've been caught a million times by swim baits, rattle traps, and jigs.
Right.
But not these big style baits.
Right, and that's that's not normally what we would think of with smart, finicky fish. The natural tendency would be to downsize,
Yeah.
and this
Yeah.
has gone the complete opposite direction.
Yeah, and that's what's crazy about it, and they've never seen it, especially on the East Coast. Never seen it, and maybe they're starting to a hair now, but still at the point of not affecting it.
Yeah. Well, I remember when the swim bait craze hit the tournament scene, and guys like Byron Velvick were probably at the head of that pack, setting records out there at Clear Lake and other places, bringing them east, and we watched a lot of failures throwing the big swim baits, because it's so you know how it is. I mean, when it's working, it's the greatest thing in the world, but there's so much time when it doesn't work.
Yeah,
You know?
I'm going to say the big swim baits are, like you're saying, they're awesome when they work, but they're more day by day than probably any bait out there, you know, as far as working or not working.
The key is to knowing when to put it down.
Yeah.
And you know, and that's as an angler, you know, like I know some guys that fish around here that this is all they throw because they're only interested in trophy hunting.
Yeah.
And that's what they're going to throw no matter what. But as a guy that wants to catch fish or a tournament guy, you know, our job is we got to catch them. And, you know, so the fantasy of trying to catch the biggest fish in the lake, it's a hero or zero mentality, because you can really go down the wrong path and it can get 5, 6, 7 hours without a bite.
Yeah.
And it's hard to recover from that.
Unless you're for a tournament guy, unless you're on a crazy good bite or you got a big bag in the boat, then pull it out. But otherwise,
Right.
I mean, you know, and what Carl's saying, you know, we talked about, you know, a lot of these other baits. It's a confidence thing. It's knowing you're throwing it the proper way and you're doing it with confidence.
Yep. Yeah. And that's, you know, and you got to wait for the conditions. Carl said it loud and clear, and I heard it. It's like a 5 to 10 mile an hour wind, sunny conditions, clear water. That's the time when you're going to get your best bites with swim baits. And we've had guys like Chris Aldane on the show here, one of our instructors, amazing swim bait angler. And that surprised me, because he says the same thing Carl said. The sunny days, the sunny days are the best days to get your big bites on these big baits. I would think, nah, that's not the case. I want a cloudy, overcast, rainy day to get the big ones on these baits.
Yeah, no, even for me around here, it seems like the sunny days, a little bit of wind, like you're saying, but around lunchtime seems to be the time.
Really?
Yeah.
You've dialed that in too.
Yeah, because
That's interesting.
you would think that would usually in a tournament situation when we're fishing, that's the toughest period to get a bite.
Right.
But for them big, giant, largemouth, most of my really big 6-7 pound fish around here have come around lunchtime. It's like I fish all morning and then all of a sudden I get a big bite.
Right.
Yep.
Well, that's interesting, and
Yep.
and that's a time, like you said, can be a tough time. But you know, it's odd that lunchtime period,
Yeah.
produces the biggest fish in the lake often.
You know, I just thought about it a little bit. Maybe it makes sense because, you know, Carl said when them fish are actively looking up at it and they have the best silhouette, and maybe at 12 o'clock, it's the best silhouette because the sun's high,
Right.
you know?
Well, you know when it's not the best time to catch a big fish at noontime is when we're filming Bass University Live noon. Lunch break, it's no big fish bite during that time period so far. So we're still dialing that in, by the way. We need to be using glide baits.
Yeah, right.
But we've got a lot of fall going on right now. We talked a lot about it, a lot. You and I both work down on the Chesapeake.
Yep.
And I love this time of year because, you know, we kind of suffer a little bit in September and October. There's so many big fish around, but they're hard. It's hard to get them all in one day, you know. But boy, now all of a sudden we're starting to see them, and the smallmouth are going nuts. The largemouth, the big largemouth are being caught. Certainly more so in my trips lately, and the stripers are everywhere. It's such a fun body of water.
It's
when
special.
you have all three things to choose from.
Yeah, it's definitely special. You know, this time of the year, like you're saying, down on the bay, they get once it sets in, once fall, almost winter sets in, they almost get predictable as far as like, because there's so many of them moving to these wintering areas or just outside of them.
Right.
You know, it just makes it that much simpler. Like I said, I love this time of the year.
Yep.
Absolutely love it.
Yeah, it's amazing, and you know it can be hard, it can be challenging. You know, like anything. You know, if you're doing the wrong thing in the wrong areas, one of the things that starts fading, and this is important in fall transition. I don't care where you're at, but when you start getting the cold fronts in the fall, the very first patterns to go south are grass patterns. Have you found that to be true?
Definitely 100%. 100%.
And it's a combination. The grass is dying. Maybe it's consuming oxygen. The bait fish, the grass grows in the shallows. That's where the water cools off the quickest. There's a lot of reasons that, you know, I try to theorize about, but bottom line is when you're in the fall, man, and you get a cold front scenario, you better get on the rock in the wood.
Yeah.
And
no
start looking away from grass patterns.
Agree 100%. And I'll tell you, one of the most important things about this time of the year is the wind, period. Because the bait is being blown around. It's almost like, so let's say you're in a pocket and you're catching them like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go back the next day and you fish that same area and there's nothing. The best thing that I can tell you about is if you found the fish day one and day two you want to go back, but you know there's a weather change coming with a wind direction or something of that matter, approach your scenario the next day different. Don't just go right to where you think they were. Stay back, either fish up to your area, scan around, because I guarantee you a lot of times they're going to either move out to the point or they're going to move deeper in the pocket. Something will change. It changes a lot. You know, once you find them for the course of the day and you're either catching them really good and they stop biting, don't leave, because during that day, if you found them right there, they're just not biting for the split moment that you're there. Stay on them fish, especially in the fall, because they will feed again. And I've had it happen a million times.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm telling you. But like, you know, with the wind, so, you know, the other day I was out, and prime example, the other day they were way back in this pocket, and then we had that nor'easter come in the other day. And even before going back to the pocket, I started to see, you know, bait on the graph, because I stopped way before it. And I started fishing, and there all the fish were. There wasn't bait or a fish on the other side, because I went there afterwards.
Right.
After I wore them out again.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Well, I mean, wind is such a key factor,
Huge.
And it always plays a role in all of my fishing. There are certain places that we fish all the time that I don't even bother fishing unless there's some wind.
Yeah.
You know?
You're right. You're right. It gets the whole system moving a lot of times.
Lets you get closer to the fish.
Yep.
It opens up the strike zone. You know, it just makes things.
Yep.
It moves bait fish around. You know, it's a tremendous deal. But this time of year too is you want to key on patterns. Like in tournament fishing, and any fishing really, I always talk about the developing pattern, and the guy that is on the developing pattern, the pattern that's going to reveal itself tomorrow and the next day, is the guy that wins.
Agree.
He wins every time. The guy that's on yesterday's pattern, almost always depleting, you know. Fish don't do the same thing for very long. And this time of year, what I find is, you know, I get into those wintering areas, and this is a great way for you guys to practice it too, is you get into the areas that are steeper, deeper, rocky areas, and you might catch one or two bites. And it's good, it's stable weather. A cold front comes through. Where you got one or two bites during stable, relatively warm conditions, during a cold front scenario, you can likely load the boat. So you might think, oh, I caught one or two 12-inch bass. This isn't a good spot. 2 or 3 days from now, after one of those big nor'easters comes through, big cold fronts come through, water temperature drops, it moves bait fish around, and you can be fishing for giants. And that's the key in tournaments, you know. Like when I'm pre-fishing for an event, if I catch one or two fish in an area, you know, a lot of people just write it off. Yep. But to me, that's the potential, right? This is an area. Let me look at the weather. Let me look at the conditions. What are the patterns? What's happening? This area could develop, and the other good thing about that, if you're a tournament guy, is places where there's only one or two bites today, there will be no tournament competition there.
Yeah.
You know, guys will fish their practice and write it off.
You know, you said about the size. You get two big bites in one area. That's a good point, because I'll tell you right now, a lot of times to find the mother load, you know, if your average fish in a lake is 1.5 pounds, and let's say you go into an area and you catch a few fish that are from 2.25 to 3 pounds, there's a reason why them bigger fish are there.
Mm-hmm.
Always. Hands down. You know, if you're catching the small ones, a lot of times them little tiny fish, 12-inch fish,
they're not an indicator.
They're not.
They're
no rhyme or reason a lot of times. You know,
Yeah.
if you start getting bigger caliber fish,
unless you're fishing an MLF tournament. Oh, I didn't say that.
yeah.
But anyway, I see the champ. I see him on my screen. That can only mean that we have him live. And you know, we've got this year's U.S. Open champ on Lake Mead, the man, the champ, Bub Tosh. How are you, buddy, man? Are you?
I'm doing awesome.
There he is. That's awesome. Did you spend all that money already?
No, dude, I'm just another working stiff. I'd hold it where I could.
All right, we got you. We're having a little bit of a breakup of the signal, Bo. But man, it's good to see you smile, man, and it's got to be a thrill. You've won the tournament that has been one of the classic tournaments, certainly on the West Coast, the U.S. Open, and there's a lot of prestige there. Clun, all the greats have won there, and now it's your turn.
Yeah, it was a very special tournament for me, and it went, it definitely went my way. But I had planned on winning that, or right out of here since the last Open. I got fourth there, and I should have won, and I was so mad at myself for letting it go and not winning. And I realized that sometimes you just can't win when it's not your time to win. You know what I mean? And I fished so hard and had that thing won, and just had some bad luck happen. So it was one of those things where I had almost a vendetta, and I was telling everyone I was one of the last guys to actually enter the U.S. Open, and paid my entry fee. I go, you better carve my name in that trophy. The only reason I'm coming is to get 100,000. Yeah. And I had just a mission, and had some special things happen in those couple of days that were really amazing. And I won 3 tournaments this year with more than almost 200 boats in every one of them. One of them had 220 something. So out here, the competition's getting better and better. These guys are all getting better and better. Every time one of our guys goes back east, you see right away, the first, they just dominate. So, that's not by mistake or fate or fluke, that every guy in this area is really good that decides to go try it full time. So, to me, I'm the luckiest guy in the world. And I've been telling everybody that for a long time. And I have a really good job, and I have really good sponsors, and I have a really good family life. And, it's just really good to be able to focus on fishing and not have a lot of pressure on me. And definitely not having financial pressure is the main thing. And so, win. And I don't care about getting bit or pitching on one or emergency areas or backup a morning limit spot, or I don't care if I get 5 bites in a day. That's what I'm going to do, whatever I think I can win. If I can only get 4 bites a day, but they're that kind of fish, I'll still die doing that, because that's all I think about. And obviously when it's your time to win, you're going to win. You can't stop it when it's your time. There's nothing you can do to not win. And sometimes you're so close and you fish so clean and so hard and do so well and do everything you can, and you fall short, and it was someone else's time. So, I think this game is amazing, and I have definitely spent a lot of years off and on in my life. And I was definitely raised by one of the best anglers that I have ever been in the boat with. My dad taught me how to fish really good from a young boy. So, I started fishing tournaments when I was 13. I've been doing it a long, long time. So I appreciate every single part of this whole. And I know even though the Wild West winds are huge and they're going to be on TV, everybody's focusing on the Open because it's actually the only $1,000 tournament in the West we've ever had. And all of my buddies, all of my heroes, all of my idols, everybody that I respect in the fishing, for the most part has won it, and so 3 times. I mean, you can't be stopped, and I feel like I tell everybody all the time, man, I feel like that Bruce Leroy, in the late 80s, early 90s move, that I got the glow, I mean, I got the glow this year. So, it's just been an amazing time, and I couldn't be more blessed. I'm telling you, lucky dude.
You know that you said something that Mike and I have talked about. We've talked about on this show a lot, Bub, is that you can't stop it. Like when you get in the winter, when you're going to win, it's like a freight train out of control. And it's like even when you try to screw it up, you can't because, you know, it's I don't know whether it's destiny or whether you're so strong on the winning pattern that, you know, you can afford to make mistakes and mistakes can happen. But that was a really interesting statement that you said. And I agree with you 100% that, you know, when it's your turn and you're on them, you can't be stopped. And you won this tournament. I was talking to BTC. He said that you wrote down months before this tournament exactly how you were going to win and that you were going to win this event. Is that true?
100%. So I wrote some other stuff too, and I'm not going to show that piece of paper because I want that other stuff to come true too. I knew I was going to win Pedro, and I went up there and I told everybody I was going to win for months, and I went up there and blew it out. I told everybody the only reason I entered the Delta tournament was to go back to back because I want to win 3 in a year. I want to tie Gleeby's record. Gleeby is the only guy ever out here, you know, ever, not anybody. So it's one of those things where you just don't win 3 big giant ones in a year, and I wanted to do that. I want to be like those guys. I always wanted to be like them. And
like
even when I was a little boy, I knew what I was going to be. There's no mistake. And
I can't do it.
It's a shame. Maybe we can get him on the phone,
Yeah,
BTC. Try
call.
to do that.
Yeah.
Because what a great story. And
Yeah, it's too good of a story to screw up with a Skype
with the bad
connection,
Skype
so.
connection. And
Give us a second, Pete.
yeah, you got it. I mean, like I talk about this. I talk about that freight train that's out of control. It's like there's nothing that can stop it. You know, when you go down that road. I know, you know, people say everything's got to go to perfect to win. Absolutely not. It all collapses. Everything fails, and you win. When I won my last open on Cayuga Lake, I had a short in my boat, and I lost my entire sonar system. I had no GPS. I had no sonar, and I dug a I don't know 10-year-old sonar unit out of my boat that still worked, but it like majority of it had a sunspot, a burn spot that blocked it. But when I hooked it up, I could see how deep the water was, and I could see if there was grass immediately under my boat or not. That's all I had. And what I did was I wound up patterning fish that were close to the bank, so I didn't need my GPS. I'm like, well, there's no point fishing offshore.
Yeah.
So I looked at different areas, and it steered me to the winning fish.
Wow.
Right? The at Champlain, on the when I won an FLW up there, the last day of the tournament, I broke off the first 5 bites of the day on zebra mussels. Broke off the first 5, and still, you know, caught enough to win the tournament.
Wow.
And you know, it's crazy like that. It's like when you are on the developing pattern, when you're ahead of what the fish are doing, they're going to keep coming, right? It's like you can screw it up. You can drop your trolling motor while you're running down the lake like Carl did. And but somehow, you know, you'll find your way into that winner spot. And to hear Bubs, because you don't hear a lot of people ever say that, you know?
Yeah.
And so,
you're right, you don't.
You know, I recognized it when he said that. And, you know, it's an interesting thing, and I talked with Mike about it a lot too, and you know, it's just, you know, when you get it figured out, when you get it dialed in, you are so relaxed. It's a whole different scenario, and the you let the patterns come to you, and that might sound completely foreign to people that might not tournament fish, you know, but it's you know, that's the scenario when the stars come into alignment. And you know, it's amazing that he won. He won 3 big ones in a row. And but I want to talk a little bit about Lake Mead. Now you've never been to Lake Mead.
Never been to the West Coast.
Now
at
where
all.
he won it was on a body of water, Lake Mead. It's out in the desert. It's right by Las Vegas, and it is the craziest thing. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. You're driving through a desert, and all of a sudden, this lake appears in the desert. You've got giant cactus. You've got crazy bighorn sheep and desert donkeys feeding on the bank.
What's going on? I'll go to. I'm sorry, I came in halfway through this conversation.
I mean, it's like, as crazy as it sounds, it's like fishing on the moon.
Were you in Mexico?
At Lake Mead, it's like fishing in Mexico, only weirder.
Okay,
but
I saw 2 full curl rams, and they're some of the biggest coyotes that I've ever seen in my life at Lake Mead, and they are healthy, very healthy from the striper population and everything else running around there. So that is an incredible, one-of-a-kind ecosystem. It's an equalizer of men because, like Clun says, I don't know if you could explain that better than Rick Clun's paragraph on me. It's just the true test of what you got for 3 days, and you got to completely change areas. You got to have areas for north wind, south wind, east wind. You have to plan on 4-footers, 5-footers. You have to plan on fishing glass calm and 25, 30-foot visibility water. I mean, you have to be ready for anything. So, gearing up for that tournament, that's what I concentrated on the most, is trying to be ready for anything. And that's, that was part of it. But I cannot stress to you how special these are, because I knew I was going to win every one of them. And I told everybody closest to me that I was going to win. I sat down in my garage and I wrote. After I won the Delta, which was back-to-back after Petro, I literally sat down in my garage, wrote in the notebook, I can't believe I won the U.S. Open after winning the 2 tournaments back-to-back. I still can't believe I won. I still can't believe that I was able to go. And then I wrote some other things that, I really hope come true in my life, and it was just more life goals and stuff that I dreamed about. But, to come home and pack your boat in the garage and start unloading suitcases and then go, wait a minute, and walk over to your table and start digging for that notebook and pull it out and open that page and start reading something that you wrote, that long ago. It's kind of an eerie feeling. But I don't know how to explain this to people. I don't know how to verbalize the feeling or what I went through or what the experience is like when that miracle stuff happens. And I call it the magic, and I know when it's coming every time. And it happened at Pedro, and it happened at the Delta. And at the Delta, because it had happened back-to-back, I knew what it was when it came, and I felt it coming. And I can't explain how you feel, but my entire body was just covered in goosebumps, and your hair stands up, and your ears are ringing. You're literally, like, the only thing I can say is I have the glow. I mean, I literally, at that point, you have elevated yourself, and I don't think that everybody can do that. And I think that everybody could, at some point in their lives do that. But is everybody really, truly lucky enough to turn it up on that day? You know what I mean? And you see those guys in your life, and I can, or whoever you want to talk about that's won tournaments before, they have experienced that magic, and they know what it feels like, and it is amazing. And I was having 2 very real conversations off and on, and prayers and kind of thoughts, and talking to myself, because I do that a lot, and about my Uncle Rick, who's passed away, and Pat Donahoe, who has been passed for several years. And I was just always thinking, about things. And my co-angler in the back of the boat tells me, he's like, out of the blue, this is a 65-year-old man, and he's just back there burning Marlboro heaters, you know what I mean? He never even fished. He laid on his back the whole day on the back deck because the guy the first day broke his back in 4-foot waves going to Greg's Basin, so he was half crippled. So he goes, I'm just going to lay back here and net fish for you. And I go, absolutely. So, he's back there burning heaters, and he tells me, I'm not a spiritual guy. And I'm like, what? What did you say? And he goes, well, they say spirits come back in all shapes and sizes and forms, And I'm like, what are you telling me right now, dude? And he's like, well, either we're on the Twilight Zone or there's a coyote in every cove. He goes, it seems like that same coyote's been walking that ridge all day, following us around every cove we get. I go, dude, we drove 75 miles. He goes, I know, that's why I said Twilight Zone. So I'm like, it was just a weird day, and leading up to all these things, I definitely had a good bag and was begging and praying and pleading and having these conversations as I'm trolling motoring through one of my best spots, watching these stripers and birds and everything kind of work the bait, and I'm just waiting for it to go, and that's a lot of the stuff that I'm doing is just a waiting game, and everybody was all fired up about the double fluke or the topwater Arizona or that new crankbait I got. And, it's exciting because the crankbait's new, and maybe to some people the double fluke rig is new. But, to me, I'm just killing time, waiting for it to go off. And so when they start popping, it's almost like I willed it to happen. And I still always feel that way. It's almost like you will it to happen. And, it's like that old saying, you come around the corner in the back of a cove and 4-pounders are blowing up on shad. Do you need any luck? You know what I mean? And at that point, I air one out into a boil. I can see shad getting blown through the air by stripers and stuff and bass. And I twitched that thing a few times and let it off on it, and kaboom. And then when I realized that I had two, it got a little crazy. And they went into the grass and locked up in some grass. And I just kind of held pressure on them, and at this point, I can barely breathe because I know it's over. And if I land these two fish, I know it's over. I mean, I literally, I'm like, just please let me touch the big one. Please let me just touch. And I'm just trying to get him up to the boat, and then come up to the boat, and the guy sticks the net in the water, and he nets. Now, mind you, when this 4-pounder swims by the boat, it is dragging a 2 3/4 backwards, and it is dragging it so fast through the water that it is spiraling backwards as it comes to me. And the guy sticks the net in the water and nets the small one covered in grass and spiraling behind the big one. Now the big one is jumping through the air trying to come off, and I'm screaming, oh God, please, no, please God. I go, drop the net. And it was like he paused for a second and he thought about what he was doing, and he just dropped the net and twisted the basket the other direction, and the fish swam right in the net. And I just dove down on top of the net and raked him over the side of the gunnel, got him down into the floor of the boat, and just collapsed. And this 4-pounder's flopping on me, hit me in the face, and I'm just like, oh God. I go, it's a 4-pounder, and I pick it up, and I'm like, it's a 4-pounder. And then, so I knew it was done, and this overwhelming feeling of calm came over me, and I knew it was over, and I felt it leave. And before I let that cast go, I was having a very, very, I said the words. I could feel it so big, dude. My ears were ringing, and I was like, you're here, aren't you? You're here now, aren't you? And I swear to you, if my body was about to explode, my heart was pounding so hard, it felt like somebody was standing on my chest, and I hadn't even cast it. And I knew when I let it go, the tournament was over. I knew when it was going through the air, I'm like, I just knew. And so this whole amazing thing happened, and then I feel it go away, and I was like, just don't go. Just don't leave. So it was amazing to feel and to be a part of and to feel it come and then know what's happening and then know what's going to happen. And you can't even prepare yourself for the magic. At the Delta, I'm rolling down a bank that I've caught hundreds of pigs off of in my life. I roll up to the spot, and I'd already caught several big bags. It's a 3-day event, and I roll up to this spot, and I catch a 5, and then I catch an 8, and then I catch a 10, and then I catch a 9, and it's like, what do you do at that? But like, I knew, and my guy nets the 10-pounder and is down in the floor of the boat, and he's like, you got to give me the bait. And I get my bait out of the fish's mouth, and it was just a vibrating jig, chatterbait. And I checked the line to see if it was sprayed, and I turned around and threw it right back out the very next cast and I caught a 989 and a 939 on back-to-back cast. So when I say the magic is happening and I feel it and I know it and I can tell it's there, like I told my partners who are grown men, these are grown men that look me in the eyes while I'm telling them, screaming in their face, you're going to see the magic today. My partner that day, I had 35 pounds for 5. My partner that day goes, you've told me 30 times today that the magic is coming. What is the magic? And you're going to see it. It's going to come. It's going to come. I feel it. It's here. My heart can't beat this fast, this hard for that long. I'm not on anything. I haven't powered any Red Bulls. I haven't powered, I'm not on Rockstar, and I'm overheating, bro. I'm overheating inside. And so I can't express to you how that heartbeat goes through that line and my breathing and that whole, when I can say to you, I feel the glow, like I know when it's coming. And so I got I told him, I go, just wait. And pretty soon I go 8 and 10, 9, 5, and then to round it off, I think I caught 4 something. And he's like, man, it doesn't look that big, and I'm like, that's a 4-pounder, And I throw it in there, and it's one of those crazy deals. So to be a part of the Open, and to come so close last year and to watch that kid get his check and accept his award, and he was a very good champ, I thought, and he he spoke well, and I thought he was a nice guy, and I was like, well, man, you know what? It was obviously his time, and I accepted it, or I tried to accept it as that right then. But I came home, and driving home, I had to stare at that 4th place trophy, and I've been staring at that 4th place trophy. I have a trophy room in my house, and my girlfriend made it for me, and the whole entire wall in this room, and this is a big room, is just first places. And then she did a side wall of just second places. And then she did a wall of just big fish. And people come in this room, and they're like, dude, Kevin, Ish Monroe walked in there, and he goes, Kevin Van Dam himself does not even have half as many trophies as you do. It's amazing how many you won. And so in my life, when I tell you I'm so lucky, I've won so many tournaments, and I've felt it so many times, and that's why I always say, and you'll always read attached to my things, something thanking God and thanking the man upstairs. And I'm not the most religious person, and I think religion does bad things too, but I am spiritual, and I try to be spiritual, and I try to be the best person I can be, and I live a simple man's life. I'm a union carpenter. I still work, 50 hours a week every week, and I'm right back to work when I come home, and praying they weren't going to fire me because I took so much time off to bass fish. So it's one of those deals where it's a life's work and it's a passion, and I couldn't be luckier in this life and in this game. And I've been fortunate to meet everyone and to be friends with everyone and everybody. Kelly Jordan is one of the funniest guys I know because he always tells me the same thing. He's like, Josh, you're a living legend. You're a West Coast legend. You've never even crossed Texas. And I'm like, yeah, right. I come back there. I've won tournaments back there. I've drove from winning tournaments in Alabama, stopped in Arkansas on the way home on a lake I've never been on before, Norfolk, and fished a 357-boat team tournament with a kid that worked at the tackle store and won by 7 pounds. The first cast on Norfolk, I caught a 714 on a swim bait. Nobody on that lake had ever seen a swim bait. You're talking about 2003, 2000. I mean, so I have been so fortunate and so lucky in this life, and so many things. And right now at this point, I have the best sponsor and the best companies with me, and I have the best family life, and like I said, a good job and a good head on my shoulders, and just trying to win everything I can come to. You know what I mean?
Well, you did great. Obviously, you're having an amazing year. You've won a lot. This is the Bass University, though. We do need to know, how'd you do it, man? We hear about this double fluke rig. You mentioned it. Can you tell us a little bit more about that rig and this crazy swivel that was necessary to make that rig work better for you?
It's not really crazy, and I mean, eventually I think the swivel will be for sale. But again, there's no special way to rig a double fluke. And guys, all kinds of guys have videos online. Scott Martin has a bunch of them. I mean, all these guys have double fluke rig videos that have been on there for years. It doesn't matter how you rig it. It matters what bait you put on it. And it matters if one bait has a weight in it or not, or one bait is heavier than the other. It matters if your flukes are even, or your soft plastic jerkbait, whatever you're using. Are they even? Is one is a one leader just a little bit longer than the other leader? How long are your leaders? You know, and are your leaders fluorocarbon or are they mono? Are you type A, you know, or are you trying to just run straight fluorocarbon with a swivel? You know, a lot of guys use the 2 swivels, which is still really good. It's just, I feel like if you get 2 big ones on, it can cut your line, you know. And so the double fluke rig, again, that was my schooling fish rig. So you can't go down the bank at Lake Mead with a double fluke rig. You can see for 60 feet, you know, down the bank and 20 feet deep. So
it's crazy. Absolutely crazy how clear that water is out at Lake Mead. Have we lost them? I don't have them in my headset. Are you still there, bud? Okay. He had more questions than he had answers at that moment. You know, what leader were you using? What swivel were you using? But that was interesting. You can't go down the bank. But I tell you, it's gin clear. The way he described it, I never seen anything like it. When I put my boat in the water at the launch ramp, and you're drifting away, and you know your truck's being pulled away, put my trolling motor down, and just looked over the boat, I got the feeling I was falling. It's that clear.
Wow.
It's like standing on a skyscraper building and looking over. You know what I mean? Then you got that feeling. That's how clear that water is. It's truly amazing. But it's got a lot of fish. It's interesting that he's so what's the word? You know, esoteric about the description of his win and how he got there. Rick Clunn has a great story about him winning on Lake Mead, and I'll never forget, because it's weird. It's odd how this lake has this effect on people. But Rick is like, I feel I on the last day I drove to a place that I dreamed about. I had never been there before. I'm not sure it really exists. And he won the tournament. The same thing, kind of similar to the way Bub's talking about.
Yeah.
Lake Mead. But it's a really cool place. Anybody that goes out to Vegas, if you're a bass head like us, man, you got to go out and fish that lake. It's just so neat. It's not known for big fish. Like he only had 24 pounds for 2 days. It's a 2 pound fishery. You catch 2 1/4, and you're going to separate yourself from the field.
Wow. Yeah, you would not think.
Absolutely.
We got him back, and we're Go ahead.
I hear you back now, Bub, and it is that way. You know, I know when I fished out there in the Bassmasters years and years ago, ounces, just pure, mere ounces separated everybody.
Not really, not even ounces, hundreds of ounces, bro.
Right.
Hundreds of ounces are separating these guys. So it is incredibly stressful when you know that you've been fishing for 3 or 4 days, like some of these guys fish longer than that, and they're on 7-pound limit. They haven't caught a 2-pounder yet.
Right.
This lake is huge. Everybody's in there like, oh yeah, you can stay in the main lake. I'd look at my partners and I told both my partners the same thing. I said, hey, listen, after this tournament's over, you can tell everybody you want the truth. But tonight and tomorrow, every word out of your mouth better be exact opposite of the truth. And both of them told me, oh, you have nothing to worry about. I'd never say where you went, And I'm like, well, you don't even know where I went, number one. But number two, you know what I mean? Everybody's going to think this one thing, and I kind of like that, and so that's going to hold true, and ultimately that really helps me, you know what I mean? Because if you think you're going to just go up there and fish small and bring one rod, good luck, buddy. Because I found, and I told Dad this when we were driving up there, we were talking, and so my dad just to catch you up on this, hasn't made a cast in over 15 years. But the brain on this guy, because he fished tournaments for years, you know what I mean? And he was one of the best. And one of the reasons I always wanted to win the Open is because he never did. My dad was one of the greatest fishermen I ever fished with, but he was a really terrible tournament fisherman. And I don't know if you guys have ever, someone like that, or you experience people like that where you're like, man, you are a bass hunter. Like, you can hunt them down one at a time and catch those good fish, but you cannot do it in a tournament. Something always goes wrong. You always mess it up. You always do this. It's just always bad luck, and it can't always be bad luck. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to come out and tell you right now, Sometimes it takes 30 years, sometimes it takes 2 years, sometimes it never comes. There are some fishermen that will never be good at tournaments that love more than guys that fish tournaments and are good at them. There's guys that love it more than they do and that suck at it. But that's the beauty of this sport, because you can be passionate at any level that you're at. You can love this game as much as you want, and you can take as much from this game as you want. You know what I mean? And I've gotten so much from it in my life. I give little pieces back all the time. And so, to me, back to the double fluke rig, to me, that was the only way that I could legally catch 2 at a time besides an Alabama rig. And in crystal clear bathwater, Jason Broska proved that you can catch them when it's cloudy and raining and blowing 35, 40 mile an hour winds. But when it calms down and gets slick, they don't chase that A-rig anymore. They don't chase that stuff anymore. So, you know, I had to have a weapon for both days. And I had to have a weapon for schoolers that were actually boiling the bait. And then I had to have a couple baits to fish around while I was waiting for that stuff to go off. Sometimes I would wait for an hour, you know, and just sit and wait and fish around. And I'd catch one, bang, you know, and I'd run to another spot, and I'd come back to a good spot, you know, sometimes more than one time if I thought it was, you know, could give me one, until I could see the bait. And once I found, you know, the fish and the bait, stripers and the birds, and that whole process was taking place, I was able to get those, you know, like you're talking about. Instead of catching 1.7, I never even slowed down for a 1.7. You know, if I didn't believe that I was going to catch one that was over 2.5, I wouldn't even stop. And one thing I regret the most is I had a spot. I'll just tell right now. I mean, I had a spot in Temple Bar, and I never made it to the temple, and I regret that, because I had a fish that I could have caught in practice, and I caught the one that was with him, and he came to the boat with the smallmouth, and it was definitely the lake record smallmouth. It was definitely over 5 pounds.
Wow!
And I got him to chase my bait twice, and so I gave up on that fish to go chase and sit on that mega school that was on that offshore bait. And nobody ever found that bait. Nobody ever came near me when I was around that bait. There wasn't a boat in sight. And, you know, I definitely had waited for Dano. And I love Dano Sullivan. And I think he kind of figured it out, because he was taking pictures of me. And he asked me at the awards when he's taking pictures of the awards boat. And he's like, hey, I was videoing you today. And I saw a 4-pound smallmouth jump in the air and turn sideways and kind of show himself and flop back in the water, way out from where you were. And he goes, how come you never fished out by where we were? It looked a lot better, and there was fish boiling out there and shit. Well, it was those giant shad. And I told him, I said, hey, listen, you know, I tried to fish around that stuff in practice, but I just never got bit out there. And he goes, uh-huh. And he kind of like smiled at me. So I think that he realized that I'd kind of goosed him a little bit and took him on a wild goose chase. And that he, you know what I mean? He was kind of confirming that with me, like, why weren't you over there where it actually looked good? Well, I had never been there, you know, this year. I hadn't driven in either one of those spots that he took pictures of me in, and I did that on purpose. And so he kind of got wise to that and was kind of like, thanks, Bubbles, you know, and it was nothing against him personal. It was just what I saw they did to Brett Hyde. I mean, and Dan's just doing his job, and they're all trying to expose this tournament, because the weights are bigger than they ever have before. The fish are bigger than they ever have been before. There's more bait and food in the lake than there ever has been before. The lake is full of grass. I talked to Bradley Hallman. He told me he punched a 4.5 pounder out of a solid grass mat. And I was like, really? And
yeah,
so
Lake Mead's not known for grass. It's a desert lake.
It is full of grass. There's more grass in Lake Mead than I have ever seen in my entire life. Wow. Every cove had grass.
What kind of grass grows out there? This is foreign to most people listening.
It's it looks like, when you look at it, there's two types. One of it looks kind of like a small, really tiny stem, like an LOD or something, you know, has really long stalks with really tiny, tight leaves, but it's spiky and spiny, and I don't think the fish really get in it, you know, unless it canopies over a bald spot or something. But there's stringy grass, and it looks like hippie grass. We call it hippie grass at the Delta because it grows real stringy, like hay, you know, kind of, and it's just, it grows, you know, in big, huge patches. And everybody at Lake Mead now for the last few years, from what I gather, has been driving into these coves and fishing these dark spots and drop shotting them and wacky rigging them and finesse fishing them because you can see them 100 feet away. You know what I mean? Well, you know, I just, that doesn't fit my style. You know, I don't roll that way. I do my own deal all the time. I try to be different than everybody in every way. So that's why I was saying, you know, your double fluke rig, you can tie it on anyway. That's not the secret. The secret is keeping those baits apart so you can actually fish them without them twisting around each other and stuff. And having one weighted a little bit or using a bait like the D-Shad made by Yamamoto, it's pure salt. So everybody asks me, like, dude, they don't make, and this is Guys Fishing. This is my sponsor. And fishermen, you know, they talk very candid, and I'm going to speak very candidly, just like the conversations we have. They roll up on me and they're like, Bob, why are you throwing Yamamoto flukes, dude? Zoom Super Flukes have so many better colors. And I'm like, yeah, they do have some really cool colors. Why are you throwing the Yamamoto? Your hook rips through it rips off, like you get one fish and the thing's gone. Like it's ripped off the hook. You can't, 1 2-pounder will literally rip your Yamamoto. And so as they're telling me that, I'm like nodding yes, like, yeah, that's how it was designed. That's why that plastic is the best. That's why they eat. That's why I can cast further than you. That's why my baits ride deeper in the walk column than yours, you know, and it's nothing against Zoom Super Flukes. I'm sure they work fine on that rig.
So you weren't weighting the I'm sorry, Bub, you weren't weighting the flukes or the D-Shads? You were just using the weight that's built into the bait.
Only one.
So what one were you weighting and how much weight were you using? Was it the front one or the back one?
15 ounce.
Okay.
The front one. The front one is the one that I like to cross, so I like it to be light. The back one is the one that drags behind like the tail or rudder, and I like that one to be my heavy one because I'm only casting one. You know, everybody tries to cast that rig and can't cast it. Well, when you're whipping that around and it's whipping around through the air like a boomerang, you know, or a lariat rope, you can't really throw it. But when one fluke is heavier than the other one, you can kind of load that rod and have a nice soft tip rod and really load your rod on the back cast and slow release it. You know, you're almost casting like a fiberglass rod cast because you just slow down the motion and over exaggerate it so you can keep them together on the cast. That way you're only casting one bait, the tail bait, you know what I mean? And then if they cross in the air and fly around a little bit, that's okay. Because as soon as they hit, one sinks so much faster than the other one, it helps them stay apart, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good thought. I never really thought about it like that. I don't use that rig that much, so this is, you're teaching all of us about it. You have 2 leaders.
Well, no, and then again, I want to illustrate to everyone that they're going to tie on and go down the bank and hammer them. But if you had a cut or a cove, or I had some island tops and some reefs, you know, offshore that had that bait pinned against a hard edge, and everybody says edge in tournament fishing, but these, you know, the surface is our biggest edge. For everybody listening, you were edge guys, and a lot of the good guys that hunt big game or hunt big bass, they get to the edge of things, and so bass pin stuff to the surface all the time because that's the biggest edge in the lake. The second biggest edge are those really sheer, bluffy, you know, sides that they can pin stuff against. And then the bottom would be another one, you know, or the side of a point or the tip of a point or on top of an island top, or, you know, they're always trying to pin something against that edge. And there has to be, you know, that scenario has to be available for them to create it. You have to have the perfect cove. It has to turn a little bit, you know, it has to, all those things have to line up, obviously. But when you find the situation where there's birds diving on bait, when there's bait flipping through the air, when fish are schooling, it was the only way that I could have a chance at, because I knew a striper was going to eat it. But if I had 2 baits on, I could catch a bass and a striper. And some of those guys were like, dude, don't you get frustrated? Because hell, I would catch 2 stripers at a time, 3 casts in a row.
Mm-hmm.
I went through every Yamamoto soft plastic jerkbait I had, every soft plastic jerkbait I could borrow, because Bass Pro Shops there didn't have squat. You know what I mean? Like I borrowed tackle just like, hey, you got any Bass Assassins or anything? Like, I didn't think it really mattered what you were throwing. It was just where those fish were, and they were eating bait. And so several times in my tournament that the keepers that I weighed in, you know what I mean, that the first day was one fish catch, and the second day, obviously, I had the double fish catch. That's probably the cast of my life. But the first day I had a double fish catch that was stripers. You know, double striper, double striper, double striper. And so I re-rigged, and I'm like, I'm almost out of these D-shads. I go, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, I don't even have a bait in the boat left. They've ate everything I had. And so I fire back out into the boil, and immediately a striper grabs it, and he takes off swimming 100 miles an hour, and then it kind of locks up. It gets too heavy to be stripers. It's no longer zinging through the water and going 100 miles an hour, zigzagging around. It's just kind of locked up out there. And I was like, man, I think another big striper got it. Well, it was a good bass. So, I mean, the first day I had a fish on it that mattered. That was a double, but it was one striper and one bass. And then the second day I had a double that was two bass. The other fish I caught was on a, you know, the Repo Man bait we made was the original Vixen, and it became the Repo Man, and we late payment, the smaller version. And the only reason I made that bait is because the guys at Lake Mead in Arizona, the desert guys, had asked me to make it because it would just destroy them there, they told me. And you'll sell a lot of these, they told me. So we made a mold, and we started making that bait in 3 colors. Well, it didn't sell a lot of baits, and it didn't destroy them, and I never casted one. And I had 2 brand new ones in a tackle box. I found that tackle box in my garage last year after I came home, and I text my buddy Teddy, and I go, Ted, I found 2 of the juice baits. They're $120 on eBay right now, and I found 2 of them in my garage, never even been thrown. I caught so many stripers on that small Repo Man, the late payment, the chartreuse back one, that it broke it, started taking on water, and so I had to use my other one on the last day because it was glass calm, and I had been throwing the big pencil popper. And for everybody that doesn't know, a few 7 years ago, 8 years ago, I made a bait called the One. It was the best pencil popper bait, and it still is, that's ever made. I'll put it against anybody's pencil popper and it'll slap them. Manufactured, I got destroyed. So a lot of things happen, and we don't make the One anymore. So the One kind of went away. It was a secret bait for a long time of a lot of people. So Derek Yamamoto's and his partner Mackie have won 5 boats on Lake Mead, 4 boats or 5 boats or something insane over the years, and every one of them was on that bait. Derek Yamamoto caught 2 at a time twice on my bait, on my top. So they won 4 boats on my topwater bait. So I have that bait tied on, my late payment bait, and then my crankbait. And the only other guy that has the crankbait that I know of is Takahiro. And Takehiro's on the same sponsor team I am, and we represent the same group together. And I have 4 colors of this crankbait coming out, and it is a fake.
What's a crankbait called?
Not like anything else out there.
What's it called?
You know what? I think I'm going to name the one I threw at the Open. I might do just that color. I might call it the Open. The Open? The U.S. Open or 2018 Open. I don't know. I mean, if I didn't have that crankbait, that new bluegill, and it looks like tilapia for me more than a bluegill. It's the right color. It's the right size. It's not a square bill. It has a hand-carved bill, but I'll tell you what size it is. If you've ever opened your live well and went, oh my God, look at the size of this bluegill. Look what that fish spit out. And it's like that 3-ounce, 4-ounce size bluegill. It seems to always be in the live well, and you're like, oh my God, I wish I would have stuffed that back in his mouth. You know what I mean?
3 ounces.
But you don't, and you see, right? And you see them, and you're like, oh my gosh, I love that's 3/4 pound. Well, that's the size bait I always wanted to have, and Strike King tried to make it with that 8.0 square bill, and it's not, nothing against Strike King, but that's bait is not that.
Bob, let me interrupt you for a second. We got some IM questions, and this is Bass University Live, and our guys are watching. We got a lot of West Coast fans, and I want to let them get their questions in. What do we got, E?
All right, so going back to that rig that you were throwing to win this event, Patrick wants to know, when fishing it, but you can't get them to commit, what are you changing?
Great question.
Because they see it a lot. I saw 30 or 40 guys with a double fluke rig tied on in that tournament. That's no secret at Lake Mead, obviously. It's, for 20 years. But those guys don't understand the small things. It's like being a rough carpenter or a finished carpenter. The details, the devil is in the details, and the details are everything. If you don't throw a D-shed, your fluke, on the fall, if you flip a fluke, just so Brent Erler almost won the classic flipping the D shad. Nobody could figure this out. When you put an 1/8 ounce bullet weight on a fluke and you flip a fluke, it wanders and falls. They used to do that in Texas, and years ago when I was fishing back east in the late 90s, early 2000s, that was a big deal to get a high pressure Texas fish. You know, flip a centipede. We called them peas. You know what I mean? So you'd flip a pea or you'd flip a fluke for those high pressured fish on like 15-pound line, 1/8 ounce weight. That was cutting edge. You know, that was way before Senko. So when they came out to D-Shad, Derek wanted his bait to be better than a fluke, and he always loved a fluke. So we worked really hard on it together. I helped him make that bait and came up with the tail, and you know, he loved a fluke bait. And when we got that thing fishing, he's like, dude, my fluke's better than the Zoom fluke. And I go, I know. Because when I stop my bait, it wiggles like a Senko. So imagine your fluke just falls stiff and it glides, but it only glides. And it has a really weightless, salt-free glide. If you have a D-Shad and you have a 16th ounce nail weight in it, you can see how much magnified that wiggle is. So when I kill that bait and I'm watching it on a long cast, I can see them because I use the lime fever chartreuse. I call it chartreuse shad, but its actual name is lime fever, silver glitter with chartreuse back. I throw that one because I can see that one, and then I usually use white one. I like 2 different colors of flukes because I can see it really good in those boils and see if a striper's got it. You know, I'm watching these fish eat it. Now, I can't illustrate to you enough that I'm watching those shad on the water. I can see the fish coming from depths. I can see striper right under and massacring them. I can see falling shad dying and falling, and I can see big bass under them eating. Okay, so that's what I'm throwing into. So it's a perfect storm going on. When they start coming on it, and I'm riffing it through the bait, and they're, you're like, oh God, here they come, right? Well, if you can't stop that bait right in front of him for that split second, but that bait still is wiggling, is staying right in front of his face, but it has such a death quiver that they'll run right up on and eat it. And so I had several, you know, like I said, several things happen that were crazy. But the thing that was even crazier, when the striper would eat one of them and he would take off at full speed, it was like he was dragging the D-Shad so fast that it was just like wiggling behind the striper, like, you know, like it's chasing the striper. And that's when I would get a bass on it. Well, when I could get one striper to eat one and drag it through the school, and a bass was like, well, you're not going to get the other one, you know, and he would come get that other one and I could get a bass. So it was
the answer is
incredible.
So the answer is get a striper to eat your bait first and to catch the bass.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's hard to do. That's so hard to do, but it's a good answer. What else you got, E?
Dave wants to know,
weight.
Implementing weight with this rig, are you using a weighted hook or a nail weight?
Never. I never use a weighted hook. They tear your baits up, and it's really hard to rig, and they're too heavy. They kill your bait. But if you go right down the line of the back after you have, and I showed that rig to several guys. I mean, it's just a 5/0 offset shank Kawagatu round bend worm hook. You know, standard round bend, not the O'Shaughnessy, just the round bend. And that hook actually goes back into the really thin part of the D-Shad where it comes through, and then you just kind of tuck the point in where you have such a long distance between the nose of the D-Shad where it's solid and then the body part where it's split. So if I can get away with it, if I don't have to have it looking really lifelike, I can push the weight of the fluke or the weight, tungsten nail weight, into the nose of that fluke bait, you know, laterally, the length of the bait. If it has to sit level like a suspending jerkbait, then I have devised a system of 3 lead weights, nail weights, and the exact space to put them in the body.
So it falls
going
horizontal.
through the bait horizontal, so I can keep that bait suspended, sitting perfectly level like a suspending jerkbait, only sinking really fast.
Right.
So I have. When I say to you that I play with tackle, now you may have not met anybody that plays with tackle like that. So, but I've watched them fall, and I've rigged them every way. And you know, your line matters, your rig matters, your setup matters. Everything has to be good equipment, but one of them has to be heavier than the other, and you have to figure out where to put that weight. Now, I gave you a lot of secrets on There's different ways to put
Yes.
your weight in that bait. And if you want it to be nose down and dive and get some depth, guys are asking me all the time, how can you fish that fluke that deep? Well, mine dives like a crankbait. You know, what do you mean, how can I fish it that deep? I got to, mine's nose weighted. It dives nose first. It gets as deep as I want it to get. Or, am I going through it vertically where I'm spacing it out and putting smaller, lighter weight, but spaced evenly distanced through the bait. So now the bait sits like a swim bait or a jerk bait, completely level plane, but it still sinks level. You know what I mean?
Sure. Well,
So there's
obviously you've tinkered with this rig tremendously. It's a lot of great information. It's an amazing win, Bub. Honestly, you're having an amazing year, and I wonder what you have written down on the paper next. But we got.
Well, I can tell you this, boy. I just keep waiting for the day that they think about it and let me come fish Major League. Because if it's about the money, I'll send you the check tomorrow. Like, just let me come. Just let me try to fish against them one time. Because that's what I want. And I'm going to go qualify through the Bass Nation. I already won one of them, and I'm going to win the next one. And I know where it is, and I know what time of year it is, and I got news for them guys. It's going to be real hard to take that one away from me. Because I'm going to go further than this. And I've told a lot of people that it's really to say I have no ego in this. Like, I'm just another dude, man. I'm just a working stiff. But I'm going to prove to everybody that you can make it happen. And you got to believe. And when I say believe, you got to believe. And I can't come over there and believe for you. I can't. And if you don't believe, by the way, who's going to start believing for you? Who's going to believe in you if you don't believe in you? So when I say believe, and I tell people, man, you got to believe, you need to think about that.
Yeah.
Do you really believe? Because I believe. But
Well,
do you really believe? And so all of these things will get you to that next level, I promise. But I'm going to prove that this works, and I'm going to do it again. I just don't know when, buddy.
All right,
But
you
it's
got
coming.
you got an invitation from the Bass Pro Shops League, the Elites, and the FLW Tour. Which one you taking, Bub?
It's the Major League for me. I think,
Major League.
if you want my honest opinion, I think the Elites are going to go through some things, and I think they have a chance to get some new personalities and get some new superstars. I think Major League has their superstars, and they're really safe with them, and their setup is just amazing, and I knew this was coming. And my dream is to fish those. So if it was against FLW, I've won FLWs, and I've never won a Bassmaster, like elite level event. I've obviously never even been able to compete in one, but I know all those guys well. I'd love to fish any of those tournaments. But to me, it's not about that. It's just I want to win, and I want to beat those guys. And to me, if you can beat them on Major League and run away with it, like Aaron has, Van Dam has, Edwin has, you watch these guys, multiple time champions, and dominate guys every day. Don't matter where they go, what weather it comes. You better bring your lunch, okay? 'Cause I'm gonna catch them. So that's what I want to go try.
Well,
I wanna see it.
MLF, Bub Tosh is waiting for your invitation. So are we. We want to see him out on
Send
tour.
it.
But
Checks in the mail, Dad. I'm telling you, checks in the mail. So I just wanted to say real quick, thanks, say hi to my mom and dad. And I was so happy to have my dad there and be a part of that, because he could
That's
never
awesome.
win one of those himself, and he always deserved to. He just didn't get. And I'm so glad I got it done for him. My Uncle Rick, I feel like he was there. Or Pat. Somebody was there with something crazy happened on that lake. I'll never forget that day as long as I live. And it was electric. I mean, as turned up as a street light. I'm going to tell you right now. So it was an amazing thing. I have the best sponsors in the world, and I want everybody to just take 5 minutes tonight before we go to bed, and I don't even care who you're praying to, but thank them for everything you got, and be happy with everything you got, and dream big.
Dream big. Well said, Bub. Thank you for taking the time to be with us and sharing. I mean, your enthusiasm is contagious. We all have it.
That's amazing.
It's just truly amazing.
Well, it's real. You can't make that stuff up. Like, I can't lie. I can't even make it up that crazy. And it's real. That's the best part of our sport, is these little moments that happen to these guys. And if I could put it in a bottle, I would have the whole world strung out like crack addicts. If I could just if I could make you feel it or help you get it, the glow or whatever it is, it's amazing. So I just invite everybody to dream big and write some goals down and be a goal-oriented person and work hard, because great things happen to great people all the time.
Right.
And
Dream
just,
big, dream big, write your goals down, and work hard, man. They're 3 huge pieces of advice, and thanks for sharing them with us, really. But we got to have you back, talk about the next win. We're gonna,
it's amazing.
I'd love to come back anytime. We don't have to be in the winner's circle. If I could ever help with any education of any bait, and I'm sorry my Skype didn't work out so good, I will have a better setup, or I will figure out how to do that, because I'd love to call back in and again, these new baits we have coming, it's not a lot of stuff. It's just one crankbait first to see how it goes. But man, it's amazing things, and guys that fish and love to fish are going to be able to fish this bait like a chatterbait and catch that size fish without throwing a chatterbait, because they're tired of it, and that's truly what we sat down to do when we made this crankbait, is how can we have a bait with the potential and catch the size of bass and numbers of bass that a chatterbait does, but not be a chatterbait, because they're tired of hearing that coming down by their cover. So it's exciting for me to have the chance to do it. When Takahiro saw him, he almost lost his mind. I know Talk's like the square build guy.
Sure.
When he fished him in his little casting tank, he was just quiet, just quiet, and that's eerie. You know what I mean? When you got the square bill assassin out there, I mean, it would have only been scarier if KBD was reeling it in, right? I mean, literally, when you say Takahiro, you're like, square bill. So it's when he saw him and just got quiet and was like, oh, he got that Texas accent. He's like, oh, you see that glow. You know what I mean? You see that glow in his eye, and it's like me or you, and we're like kids, all of us. You know what I mean? That glow, you see them light up, and you see what they're thinking about, and so it's that connection, and it's on that level. So this bait is going to be great, and I'm just glad to be able to be a part of it.
Man, well, we look for the open crankbait coming out. Bub
baby.
Tosh, the U.S. Open champ. Thank you, man.
Champ.
You have.
I appreciate it so much.
We'll be watching. Thanks again for being with us. Thanks for sharing all your information, Bub Tosh. Everybody, thanks very much.
Thanks, Bub.
Thank you.
And I also want to give a shout out to Dan O'Sullivan, Advanced Angler. Who wrote a lot about what Bub did, and of course he was covering Bub through this whole event. Also a shout out to Mark Jeffries and Bass Zone for covering the U.S. Open, and our boy
Pangrack
Matt Pangrack winning the AAA League, winning the non-boater side.
I just got to say, I talked to Mark briefly, and I said, yeah, man, how about your boy Matt? And Mark's had Matt since straight out of college as an intern, and now he works for him for the last 10 or so years or something. And Mark just he's like, it's all about the draw. I'm like,
where's the love, man?
He's like, no, I'm serious. It's all about the draw. It's all luck of the draw. Totally shit on Matt.
Come on, man. Is that true?
It's true.
I saw Matt give Mark nothing but love for giving the time off the fish.
It was
just a big love fest from Matt.
It was a one-way street.
Well, congratulations from us, Matt. That was amazing, and congratulations to Bub and to
Mark
and to Mark
and Uncle Steve
and everybody else. Who else? And Carl. Good luck with your decision.
My cheeks hurt from Bub. Oh my God, he's amazing.
Man, he's got so much enthusiasm. You bring that to the water, how can you fail?
Wow,
You're right.
You're right.
I mean, when things go south, that's when you need it. Right?
He needs to bottle that, man.
Yeah,
put that in a tube like Liquid Mayhem or something.
I'm telling you, man, it's contagious. You can hear it coming over the airwaves. But,
speaking into existence.
Oh, so we had some winners, man.
All right, and we got some winners.
Yeah, Egg gave away some prizes.
Yeah, Patrick won the G-Force handle for his question to Bub, and then T.A. Hogsnatchin won some Molex product, I believe, right?
For best name,
probably Rapala.
Or Rapala.
Okay.
Okay.
Unless I can get a hold of Carl and get him to loosen up with some sneaky frogs.
Ah, nice.
I'd like to get my paws on one or two of them. Anything else on the board there? Anybody want to comment on Bub?
I ain't seeing it. No.
Well, we got other prizes. We got the Hydro Wave and the Riot bait packages. We're going to give them away.
It's going away too. We're going to pick a random. What the hell it's
Facebook
called?
shares.
Facebook likes and shares.
Yes.
Thank you guys that you're not watching right now because Facebook kicked us off.
Yeah, I think that must be a thing now. I think they must kick us at an hour 20 because I know somebody else that happened to like on Monday. We did 4 hours on Facebook our last Ike Live or 2 shows ago, and then they booted us. But I think they're cutting the cord on all that. Looks like they're cutting the shows at around an hour or so. So
That's
something
nice
else for
of
us
them.
to figure out.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
It's
That's because he's too long-winded.
Yeah, it's definitely it's definitely
Greg. I'm a.
It's definitely Greg.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then the Hydro Wave to a new subscriber.
To a new subscriber, we'll be announcing it on our social media and through email. So hey, thanks everybody for watching. We're going to be back real soon with another Bash University Live. We're going to be diving in deep with some different techniques that are going to apply to everybody, going to help everybody. If you haven't subscribed to Bash University, you can still do it and get into the contest to win the Hydro Wave. TryBU. Use the code TryBU at bashu.tv and it'll give you 10 days free. Come and check it out. It's going to help you be a better angler. What better time to study bass fishing than right now in the off season when a lot of guys aren't fishing? This is the time to up your bass fishing IQ. So come over to bashu.tv, subscribe, and check out all the great seminars from the greatest anglers in the world. And we are going to be back real soon with a new Bash University TV Live. Big shout out to Greg DePalma. Thank you for being here with us, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
If guys want to follow you out on tour, how do they do that?
Yeah, you can do it through Facebook at Greg DePalma /GDP. If you can, or follow me on Instagram at Greg DePalma, and Twitter is GR DePalma.
Awesome.
Yeah, so good ways to follow me. I also got a website. It's gregdepalma.com if you want to go that route also.
Okay.
And Greg guys on the flats too, right? Just
yes.
like you, Peter?
Yeah.
Greg?
Same as Pete here. I have a guide service on the Upper Bay. It's called Upper Bay Guide Service. You can go on Facebook, look it up that way. It's probably the easiest, and get all the information on there.
I thought you were going to call it Better Than Pete Glusick Guide Service.
Nah, I can never do
No,
that.
that one was taken.
Pete helps me out a lot, man.
Okay.
Now, for those that want to see you on the Elite Tour next year, who should they write?
Well, I guess there's a lot of contacts on the internet for Bass Nation, so.
That's right. Write some letters. Let's get Greg out there on tour. He deserves it with all the new and I think they're coming to the Chesapeake on the Elites. I thought they might have changed the schedule. I heard that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I just want to say a lot of the products that I basically showcased today, almost all of them can be bought either at Susquehanna Fishing Tackle or on the web at sfttackle.com.
Awesome. We love Susquehanna Fishing Tackle. Yep. Love those guys, Mike and George. Thank you guys. Thank you, Jeff, for being here. Eric, BTC,
and our boy Dave Costner and,
yes.
and Dr. C. The heck's that called, Pete?
Dr. C Fishing.
Dr. C
Pro.
Fishing.
Yep.
Check that John out.
Purchase a line, Dr. Pro. It's going to keep your line in order. Take care of one of ours.
Good kid, man.
Good
Real
luck.
Good kid.
Good luck, buddy. We're pulling for you. And we will see all you guys back here real soon. Bash University TV Live.
There you go. Fatty. Another 3. It's a big one. That's a 3-pounder.